Meeting of April 21st, 2025. We call to order, and seeing no one else on Zoom, we'll have a roll call of members. Start with Curtis.
Curtis, register.
Darrell Ford.
Sally Needell.
Eric Lund.
Joe Friedman.
I'm Todd Zellig, I'm the administrator.
Robin Vogt.
Thank you. And the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any questions or would want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I so moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand. And seeing it unanimous, the agenda is approved. Public comments. The public is invited to speak up to 5 minutes. And please state your name and where you live.
Hi, my name is Sally Tobias, and I live on 107 Madbury Road. And I'm here, I'm chair of the Housing Task Force, and I am here to encourage you to pay very good attention to passing a more open and friendly and inviting 79E. And remember that it is an incentive, and we incentivize when we want something or we need something. I know there's a lot of concern sometimes about giving money away, but you either hang that carrot out and are willing to offer that carrot up, or you will never get anything. And I say the town is better off going 5 years without the immediate gratification to go the rest of time with the gratification. The downtown is in sore state, and we are unfortunately reaping what we have sowed with anti-business development zoning. I'm very happy that you've passed that you all approved of the zoning we brought forth, and we are working on that at the planning board, and there is more to come that I hope you will embrace as well. I also, one thing I noticed in your council goals was the establishment of a community business organization. I think it was Mr. Register's opinion. Just for those of you who may not know, we had something very similar to that a few years ago called Celebrate Durham. Pretty much it was the exact same thing. COVID kind of killed that off. I was very much involved with that. Al Howland actually created there's a website that you may want to have a chat with him about. We would love to talk to you about that. There's a website, there's an Instagram. It can still be used for promotion and communication. After COVID, for me, I kind of turned my focus on housing as the best option to create more development downtown. You do need the change of zoning. You do need to establish more housing downtown. At the same time, you need to bring in those businesses. And I would even suggest that you create a full-time, serious promotional goal to persuade businesses and to fight the bad reputation that we have, that Durham is a place to invest in, and Durham is a place to grow in. You have a lot of alumni that would probably love to put down roots here in Durham. I think it's time to really start taking a different look at economic development, think out of the box, and because what we do now is going to affect a lot. And if we do go into a recession, as many of us feel we will, things will get tougher. And I'm just encouraging you to do that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sally.
I will note for the record, Councilor Burton arrived at 7:03.
Hi everyone, I'm Joe Warzen. 102 Madbury. I apologize, I'm kind of jumping the line. My wife and I, we have a babysitter and a date tonight, but I'm one of the people going to be one of the alternates for the library trustees. So I just want to introduce myself and say hi.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to meet you, man.
All right, thanks guys.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Enjoy your date.
Thanks guys.
Is there anybody else?
Yes.
Joshua Meyerowitz, 7 Chesley Drive. As some of you know, Todd Selleck is in violation of federal rules right now because he has in his signature his preferred pronouns. And if he were a journalist, the Trump administration. I'm here again with a free-form comment and a precise one-sheet handout when I finish. And I'm here to answer the calls to citizen action. That includes a call for mass action from liberal Robert Reich at Berkeley on April 17th, saying that everyone must act now to resist tyranny and the threats to freedom of speech and our democracy. And I'm answering the call from conservative David Brooks in a column the same day in the New York Times saying that what's happening in the United States now, as the example I just gave, is not normal. And that rather than separate acts of resistance from different quarters, universities, law firms, so forth, we really need to have a mass, not normal act of resistance. And I'm also responding to the call from Pope Francis in his last public address, who condemned Israel's ongoing ceasefire violations as deplorable, and also responding to thousands of Israeli military reservists who have condemned the resumption of killing as a political survival ploy for Netanyahu, serving no other purpose other than to endanger the lives of the Israeli hostages and many others. I have no official status now, you do, but I feel a commitment to act for multiple reasons. I was a witness to police crimes at UNH on May 1st. That gave me a moral obligation to press for justice for those falsely accused. I lost most of my cousins in the Nazi Holocaust and also deeply steeped in Jewish education and culture, and that gives me an obligation to support the disavowal in the handout I gave you last time from thousands of Jewish academics denouncing the weaponization of anti-Semitism as a means of destroying universities and crucial research. Also, I'm relatively safe. I'm not sure how safe anymore any one of us is, but I feel I have to speak to protect more vulnerable others. I'm a retired professor, so I can't be fired, as some Jewish faculty have been or have been threatened about for speaking about Israel's most right-wing government ever. And as a U.S. citizen, I'm probably safe from deportation, though Trump has now talked about threats against homegrown enemies of the state. Others are less lucky. The PhD student from Turkey at Tufts with a valid student visa was targeted for writing a op-ed in the student newspaper, co-authoring an op-ed. Masked men and women in unmarked cars came to get her. She thought she was being kidnapped by criminals. She wanted to call the police. They said, "We are the police." But what really chilled me as a Holocaust damaged family member, one of them said to her, "I'm not a monster, I'm just following orders." And if you look this week, by the way, in Israel's Yom HaShoah, the remembrance, Israel shuts down in silence, no one moves, no one speaks. And if you know anything about the press coverage during the Holocaust was barely mentioned, even in the New York Times, by Jewish-owned editors and Jewish-owned reporters who didn't mention that the victims in Auschwitz were Jews, and also who were called the victims unfortunates. You can't rescue unfortunates. You can't bomb the tracks to take the unfortunates, and you can't let in unfortunates. The U.S. did not want to take in Jews. The New York Times has also restricted their journalists from certain language to describe Palestinian victims. And they have not mentioned that I know of that a Cannes Film Festival subject, a photojournalist, 25-year-old, the day after a film about her was accepted at Cannes, Israel targeted her house in Gaza and killed her and nine of her relatives. We have peace activists, Palestinians who are working closely with Israelis, being trapped and arrested as Mosin Mawadawi has been. Israel is making life in Gaza and the other occupied territories impossible. Settlers attack Palestinians, including the director of the film, Academy Award-winning film, No Other Land, and the people being attacked are being arrested. So I would just ask you to respond to the handout I give you about justice that still needs to be done for falsely accused students. Also, I've been remiss in saying how great I think the recent minutes have been, and I really appreciate the detail. And I don't think that going to DCAT is a viable alternative for most people, so, thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak at public comment? All right, thank you. We have Abigail Bagley to present the report from UNH Student Senate.
Real quick, should we make a motion to allow M. Fruit to join the call? Wasn't she online?
Yeah, she's on Zoom.
I will second the motion.
So roll call vote. Mr. Robin?
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Thank you. Ms. Bagley? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your holiday weekend if you celebrate Easter. I personally was in Philadelphia with family, so that was very exciting. Very sad to say, this is my last town hall meeting. End of an era. Unfortunately, I did ask Ben Doyle, the new student body VP, who my replacement was and if I could introduce them, and he said, we have not decided yet, which is okay. So hopefully they will be at the next town hall meeting or reach out to Todd to introduce themselves once they get named, which is very exciting. I introduced a resolution last Sunday, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before at Senate, thanking you all for passing the resolution regarding the budget, the state budget. We really appreciate that support. And so it's just a thank you resolution that got introduced last week, and I will send to Administrator Selig once it's finalized with wording, so that way you guys have it on your record. Just basically thanking you all for passing this resolution and supporting the town and UNH and understanding how much that relationship is interconnected. We have the Undergraduate Research Conference this week, April 21st to 26th. Specific dates and when certain colleges are going is on the university website, but it's a really exciting time for undergraduates, specifically seniors and juniors who have been working on these research projects all year to really showcase what they've been working on to peers and family members and people in the town. It's a great event that we put on every single year. The Graduate Research Conference was last week, a little bit smaller, but still very exciting. Tons of different stuff that students are working on. This past week as well, we had the College Tour TV episode premiere in the Granite Stateroom. And I don't know if you folks know, but last semester we had a TV crew come on campus and interview and walk through different students throughout their day. It was I believe 8 or 10 students that got to be interviewed and basically showcase what UNH has to offer, why we are a university that everyone should come to, a campus that everyone should be involved in, and get those tuition numbers up, which is all very exciting. I believe it's going to be on Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. So you can all watch once it premieres. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. We have more strategic planning listening sessions for the master plan happening this week on campus, specifically Tuesday, April 22nd from 9:30 to 11 a.m. in the Stratford room, just to give students another opportunity to talk about the strategic plan for campus and what do they like, what do they not like, what do they want to see improved throughout the next 5 years. And it's just another opportunity for students to discuss what the various other strategic planning sessions have talked about and where we can go from here. I'm not exactly sure when the master plan will be presented to the Board of Trustees, but I know it's sometime at the end of this month, which is exciting. We have Student Leadership Awards next Wednesday night. It's ticketed. All of the student leaders across Manchester online, UNH Law, and obviously UNH Durham campus get nominated by faculty and other students, whether it be best programming for undergraduates or student leader of the year, various different awards that we get. It's a collaboration with the president's office to kind of showcase the students that we have on campus who are very involved in not only academics, but everything else that they do on campus. We also have Faculty Senate and Student Senate have been working collaboratively on a new discovery program. So it's basically our gen eds that we have to fulfill every for our undergraduate degree, and they've been workshopping what a new discovery program would kind of look like. And it's been going on for the past 2 years. So we're having a listening session for that to have students kind of discuss what they like and what they don't like about the various buckets that would be gen ed requirements that we would have at UNH. And that's from 12:30 to 2 tomorrow in the MUB, which is exciting because this is a good opportunity for students to kind of have a real say about, what they want to take at UNH and what they actually like. So it's a lot of good things right before graduation. So very busy, but also at the same time, very exciting and good stuff happening. So I'll take any questions.
Can I ask you, the undergraduate research conference, is that open to the public? And
I believe so, yeah.
do you know where it is?
It's in the Granite State Room in the MUB. It has been in the past. I know it also is in, depending on what college it is, I know it's all on the university website, like a calendar almost. If not, I can send Todd a link as well. And it's in various of the 300 rooms, and then also either in the Stratford room or the Granite State Room, but throughout the MUB throughout this week.
And SEPS is at the Whittemore Center.
Oh, yes, that is right. SEPS is at the Whittemore Center.
Thank you. Councilor Burton?
I'm used to clicking. I just wanted to let you know, we just came from reception at the President's house, and there were a number of students there, and one who has been with you here, and they really did a good job. They didn't stand in the corner. They buttonholed the state reps who were there, including two, one chairman of the Senate Finance Committee and one a division in the House. It was not unimportant. And I must say the President did a very good job of selling UNH. And I think it was because of the students that it will be a success.
We've been really lucky. The President Chilton has been very communicative about what's going on and what her plan is, and very transparent about everything, which is exciting because that hasn't happened in the past from what I've heard. So,
Thank you.
Councilor
I just
Nadell?
wanted to say, Abigail, you've been awesome.
Thank you.
For the time that I've been on the council, you've given us the most detailed, interesting reports from the university, so
Oh, thank
really
you.
appreciate all your efforts.
I try to be prepared when I come and have something to
you are
say
very
and keep you all informed. So, yeah.
Thank you.
May we know what's next for your adventures?
Yes, I actually have an answer, which is really exciting. So I've alluded to it some, but I've been working part-time for my local county sheriff's office in government affairs, specifically policy analysis, and I'll be going with them full-time on the government affairs team. So just in time for budget season in Massachusetts State Legislature, which is super, super exciting. I had 5 phone calls on Friday when we all had to draft amendments and make sure everything was okay. So still very exciting, very happy. I'm going on a vacation before I start full-time, but I'll be full-time there in June, which is exciting. So
You can list the
Thank you.
nine councils who will serve as references for you.
I'm sure I could just send them the YouTube link to all of my different reports and say, see, it's all good. So yeah, I appreciate it so much. And thank you guys again. This is, as much as you probably don't think I actually like to come to town hall meetings, I really do. It is a highlight. And everyone that has come with me have also very much enjoyed it. So I hope that the next designee has just as much excitement for this as I do. So yeah, very excited.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
We notice that Representative Selig is in the audience and may have just missed the public comments, but we'll have some leeway and let her make some public comments.
Thank you very much to the council and to the public. So for the record, I am Lauren Selig. I am one of the state representatives for the town, including Representative Burton, Representative Smith, Representative Howland, and Representative Horgan. We are deep in the state budget process. The House has passed one version of the budget, which does not match the governor's version. But there are 2 events I want to make sure the public is aware of that are coming up in the very immediate future that are opportunities for the public to speak about the budget. The first is run by the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute, and it's going to be tomorrow night. Thank you for the time sensitivity, but tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Northampton Town Hall. And again, it's open to anyone from the public to go. But the research director, Phil Sletton, the research director of the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute, is going to give an overview of the budget proposal, including anticipated shifts in responsibilities from the states to municipalities, and that's expected to be a fairly substantial financial hit to the municipalities, and the potential revenue impacts on all of our local towns. And then after the presentation, there will be an opportunity for public input and discussion. And then also, apparently, Northampton's getting all of the attention at the moment. Wednesday night at Winnicott High School, beginning at 6:30 p.m., our State Senator Rebecca Perkins Quokka, as well as Senator Deborah Altschiller, will be doing a presentation and a listening session about the budget. So again, that'll be Wednesday night at 6:30 at Winnicott High School. I did on the community Facebook page put links to both of these events. I don't believe you have to sign up. I think you can just go. And if I can answer any questions for the public, please don't hesitate to reach out. I only learned about these in the last few days, so I've shared them as quickly as I've had the information.
Thank you. Councilor Burton?
It's an aside, thank you, and thank you for the presentation tonight at the President's Office. That was really helpful. I talked to the school superintendent today. They're most worried about the, what do you call it? You can go to any school in the state because...
The voucher program?
Yeah,
No, not the voucher program.
It's an open tuition program that you can choose to send your child.
would
So,
allow-
I'm not going to get into policy discussion here from the podium. I just wanted to make sure the public was aware that both tomorrow night and Wednesday night, there are opportunities. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Northampton Town Hall, Wednesday night at 6:30 at Winnicott High School.
Just to do a commercial, if that bill passes, many students may want to go to Exeter High to play football, for example, or go someplace else. And if that happens, Oyster River will pay 80% of the cost of doing that. And that's probably one of the more onerous things that slips through into the budget. There are others, and I urge you to keep an eye on that.
Yes.
And the school system, too, is in some issues, too, because they're
Yes,
part of a lawsuit, so.
Part of the increasing the share that the university will get is being done by reducing the amount municipalities will get across the state. So anyway, I will leave it there. And tomorrow night, Northampton Town Hall at 7, Wednesday night at Winnicott at 6:30.
Thank you.
Okay, the unanimous consent agenda. Does anyone care to pull any, or shall we?
I was hoping to discuss C if possible. I just wanted one clarification before we approved it.
Okay.
Can I pull C off? I wasn't here when you asked before.
C, did you say?
Yeah,
C.
I just want to talk about it because
Yes.
it's very positive.
Okay.
I would like to pull A. The aquifer.
Yes. Well, then we will, I'll move to recommend upon the move upon recommendation of the administrator award the 2025 Road and Sidewalk Program to Continental Paving of Londonderry in an amount not to exceed $732,800 and authorize the administrator to sign the associated contract.
Second that?
Thank you. Counselor, a vote?
Robin, vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Thank you. Counselor Friedrichs? There you go.
Aye.
Thank you. So we will, why don't I go ahead and move to start the discussion that the town council approve on first reading, amending chapter 175 zoning, article 16, aquifer protection overlay district, section 175-86 use regulations of the town code to amend site drainage and permitted uses and set the public hearing date for May 5th, 2025.
I will second the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Lund. And is there discussion about this? Councilor Friedrichs, you wanted to pull it. We could start with you.
Yes, do we have Michael Barrett in the audience with us to answer some
Yes,
questions?
he is.
Or-
Yes, we
Okay.
do.
Maybe he could come up to the
He's on his way.
mic. Wonderful. So my first question is I wanted to inquire as to, I believe there are some industrial uses that are permitted within the Aquifer Overlay District. Is that correct?
The Aquifer Overlay District covers numerous parts of town. All of them are in outlying areas, and I think they're pretty much all zoned rural and residence coastal, with the exception of some land in Orly around Technology Drive, and there's also a portion that's around Beach Hill Road. And in that area in Orly, yes, it does allow industrial type uses.
Then the line of questioning is out of concern that we did have a conversation with Rick Rain in this coming to the planning board, and one of my questions was about PFAS and other sorts of forever or particularly harmful chemicals that are not filtered out by a septic system. And so one of my potential concerns about the language as amended is that if we're allowing industrial uses over our aquifer, and we are allowing them to be treated through septic systems as opposed to requiring a connection to town water, then we potentially could be being short-sighted. And I know that we are all hoping to increase the tax base, but I don't want us to think only 5 years ahead. I think we need to be thinking 50 years ahead and making sure that our water supply is safe in the future. And so, that's a particular question that I have is a concern around commercial and industrial uses that are zoned to be permitted over the aquifer and maybe continuing to require a connection to town water and sewer for those. But I also, I wasn't able to really understand with the amount of information that was brought forward why we have an aquifer overlay protection district and understand the purpose and the reason it was created if we remove the requirement for a connection to town water sewer. Because as far as I could tell, that is the only thing that sets the aquifer district apart from any other uses or our normal site plan regulations. And so I am worried a little bit that we are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So I don't know if Michael, you might be able to provide some of that history as well, like when was the aquifer ordinance written? And if these changes are enacted, what is the point of continuing to have an aquifer overlay district? Will there be any difference between that and, say, normal site plan regulations?
Oh, thank you. Councilor Friedrichs, let me just clarify one thing that I should have stated a moment ago. While a portion of the overlay district is in the Orly zone, in the overlay district, actually, it does list a number of prohibited uses. And that it's pretty comprehensive list, and that includes all industrial uses. So even though the base district allows it, that's superseded by the overlay. So it would not allow any industrial uses in this district. And it's a pretty exhaustive list. I won't read the whole thing, but it includes disposal of solid waste, processing of toxic materials, leachable wastes from residential, commercial, industrial facilities, storage of petroleum, road salt, and a number of other items, animal feedlots, pretty comprehensive, automotive uses, mining. So I think that's where it offers the protection. In terms of the purpose of the district, it is interesting that it, under authority and purpose, it speaks to public health and protection of identified aquifers. It does, and aquifer recharge areas, which presumably is more to serve private uses. I think it's quite unlikely that we would ever see a town well, since they're pretty small areas, and I'm not sure how much the recharge rate is. But it is the idea that, at least for private uses, to protect that aquifer.
And do you know when this was adopted and how many applications have been affected by this ordinance since its adoption?
Well, in the, I haven't looked precisely, but it's probably, thinking about when some of the other ordinances like the wetland and the flood hazard were adopted, I would guess it's at least 30 years. In the 13 years I have been here, there has not been any application in the overlay district.
So I think it had come up a little bit at the planning board that there was maybe a technical fix element to this. And so that's where I was a little confused. If this is a technical fix, I was trying to understand if there has been any applications that had been affected in the past and how those applications were handled. Maybe it's not a technical fix.
Well, I did hear somebody thought that that there was a single-family house built at some point in the outline area where that it may not have complied with the requirements, that the two particular requirements for site drainage to connect to an underground storm system and go to a holding pond outside of the aquifer district, and secondly, that it be connected with sewer. So there probably are some sites, although I can't say, I'm just responding to what somebody mentioned at a meeting. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were some single-family houses out there that were in the overlay district that were not connected to sewer. I don't know, perhaps it was an oversight in the past. But when this was brought to my attention, I realized it was problematic because almost all of the sewer is far from the town's wastewater system. And secondly, the requirement for an underground storm sewer system would be difficult in rural areas where most of the treatment for stormwater is above ground. I'm not sure that answers your question.
I think that's helpful context. I guess my last question might be, well, I'm going to let some other town councilors speak first if they have any questions.
Does anybody else have any comments?
Just to clarify, the reasoning behind removing this requirement is because it is exorbitantly expensive and currently does not afford the services recommended and required by the ordinance, correct?
Yes, it's, well, the two changes, one is in terms of the present language that requires connection to the town sewer system. I mean, it would really be impossible. I think the only place that is on sewer or close to sewer is a small portion of it by Technology Drive. The rest of it is in very outlying areas. So I suppose, you know, with enough money, one could bring sewer a mile.
But so as I'm understanding it, it's the town that's in violation of its ordinance, not necessarily the residents, correct?
Well, I don't, it's possible that there was some approval in the past for a single-family house that didn't connect to sewer. I don't know.
Sure.
I heard that. I don't want to cast aspersions. I don't know where that might be. I mean, I could research that if that was desired.
I'm trying to understand that the general gist of the problem solving here is that we have an ordinance that states one must be attached to sewer and stormwater drainage in order to be in compliance. And now we have residential areas that are separated by geographical distance from hook-in points to stormwater drainage and sewage systems. And is an unrealistic requirement because either the town needs to move sewage and stormwater way closer to outlying districts, or residents will have to pay a lot of money to either create a community co-op type security or septic system, stormwater reservoir, or they'll have to create their own individual drainage retention ponds. Is that how I'm understanding the?
Right. In terms of the wastewater storm sewer, wastewater sewer, sanitary sewer, I would say that it's impossible. It's impossible or virtually impossible. Nobody is going to pay for extension of town sewer at a tremendous distance. So that's impossible to do. In terms of the underground storm sewer, that does not have to be an extension. One could build an underground system, even just for a single-family house, but it would be very impractical. It would be very impractical and I think unreasonable. And I think that the objective is off because you can treat stormwater very well without an underground system with a rain garden and other things. As Councilor Ford spoke to the Conservation Commission about. And secondly, I think the idea of it is a little bit out of date. Presently, within an aquifer, you want to recharge the aquifer itself. You don't want to send your discharge beyond the aquifer. So it's both a matter of, I think, very, very difficult and unreasonable as well, especially for a single-family homeowner, which is the main use allowed in those areas.
So I have two more questions. One, does it nullify the entire overlay district?
No, but if we were to receive an application, now, I think we would either say, to the person buying a lot, wanting to build a single-family home, you need a variance, which of course should be granted, although one even wonders, a variance there has to be a hardship unique to the property. Or what we would say, really the only way to deal with it is with a zoning amendment.
Certainly, but there is protections in the Orly and other parts of the districts that remain in place even with this amendment if it were to pass.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, there is because of the prohibitions.
Certainly, and the second question is more of a comment. To me, this sounds like if we were to keep it in place, we would add an unreasonable economic requirement onto housing concerns in a time when housing is a significant concern by itself.
That's correct.
Okay.
Councilor Friedrichs, you still there? You had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that when there's a zoning ordinance change, it does not require existing construction to connect to town water sewer. It would only apply to anything that's new. And then I did want to ask Michael if we were to consider an amendment to change the current draft so that it only exempted single-family residences from connecting to town water and sewer, but continued to require, say, industrial, commercial uses to connect to town water and sewer. Would that be considered a major amendment where we need to go back to the planning board for rehearing?
Well, in terms of, keep in mind that most of the overlay district is in the rural and residence coastal, where the primary use is single-family houses. So it's very unlikely that you would see any use other than a single-family house. Certainly, there's some odds, various institutional uses that are possible there. And in the areas where there is sewer available on Technology Drive, I think if we have a site review and sewer is close by, the planning board would almost certainly require that they tie into it. But if you wanted to make that kind of change, could you do that without going back to the planning board? I think if you had language that said where there is sewer readily available, and an applicant must connect to it, that seems very appropriate. I think you could do that without going back to the board.
Is there any other question or comment about this issue?
I just wanted to say I would support that amendment change.
Right now, there's a motion to approve the proposed ordinance. There's no amendment been specifically
Sorry,
proposed.
also a point of order. I believe that we cannot be voting to approve the ordinance without a public hearing.
No, this is to set the public hearing on May 5th. That's
Okay,
what this
thank
This
you
is
for
the
the
first
clarification.
reading on the ordinance.
First reading.
Oh,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I believe if the council wants to modify this in a way that's consistent with the intent, such as adding a line where the town sewer, where connection to the town sewer system is reasonably available, an applicant must connect to it. If you do want to make a change like that, I believe you can make that now as part of this, so that would be part of the public hearing.
Councilor
Do
Ford?
you really think that's necessary, Michael? I mean, if
You
the
mean to add that
sewer is
language?
there, they're gonna hook up to it. They don't wanna be building a septic system. They don't need to.
Right.
And if it's an industrial use, the planning board wouldn't let them anyway, so I don't.
I
understand
think
the
you're
issue.
covered, but if you do want to make that change, I think that you could.
It's like 6 words.
But it serves no purpose, that's my point.
It's a lot of the stuff we do though.
Well, not hearing any formal amendment, I think we call for a vote on this motion.
Then I would put forward an amendment. I would suggest changing the language, the proposed changes to only remove the requirement for connection to town water and sewer for single-family residential use, or for residential use. For residential use.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I will second that amendment.
Is there any further discussion on that amendment?
Hi, it's Rich Rain. Can I make one comment, please?
Sure. Rich Rain, Head of the Department of Public Works.
I just want to ask Michael, is the new technology drive, the RJ Kelly facility, is that within this district?
No, they are not. There's a very tiny northerly corner of their lot that is not developed that is, but that's the only part.
Okay. The reason I was asking is some of these facilities have other options available to them rather than connection to the sewer. For example, that facility with Collins Aerospace was interested as a industrial generator of wastewater connecting, and after they've done some pretty deliberate analysis, found it was more economical for them to use a evaporation process and work with the DES Air Resources Division to permit that and actually not have any industrial wastewater discharge to the town. So I guess I would just make sure that any language that mandates a connection leaves a little bit of flexibility, like an or equal or something acceptable to the town, rather than have a overlay district that mandates them when it might be economically less feasible or attractive to them, and technology might support other options.
I believe that is one of the technical issues that this amendment aims to fix, is that the current ordinance requires town water and sewer connections even in parts of town where no town water and sewer is available.
I totally understand that, and that seems like there's a conflict there, but where there is, water and sewer available, I'm just saying there may be some value in having some flexibility rather than a mandate to connect when other options do exist that would be perfectly satisfactory to the town.
And the current ordinance requires connection to town sewer. It doesn't say anything about town water.
And
I was referencing sewer.
Right.
what you're talking about, Rich, would be, say, a technology center that wants to do their own engineered system on their own site and keep it out of our system, and it's still approved by the New Hampshire DES and best practices, that we should allow some flexibility to have that happen rather than mandate they connect. Is that part of what you're saying?
That's exactly what I was saying. There's other types of technology that is protective of the aquifer, as protective of the aquifer as a centralized treatment system. And that could be evaporation as they've selected, or possibly a packaged treatment system on site. So I would just recommend some flexibility for us to review that and determine if it's something that would be approved and provides that same environmental protection.
And as part of any site plan, the planning board has total discretion over how they handle their wastewater on site, otherwise, the kind of system, et cetera.
Mr. Chair, a question if I may.
Yes, Council Register?
Mr. Rain, in your opinion, do you believe that the amendment to the motion that is exempting single-family residences but maintains the requirement for all other types of buildings or facilities is too restrictive to that point that you're making with the leeway for additional acceptable solutions?
So, Council Register, I haven't heard the specific language of the amendment, but I would just say that if the amendment provides that flexibility where it's an approved or equal as determined by, the town of Durham or Public Works, I think that would be acceptable, and it would provide that flexibility that I'm referencing.
The amendment as made does not have that flexibility.
That's as I understand it, Council. Thank you, Mr. Rain.
Administrator Selig?
Well, and like one of the challenges, I think, in looking at this is we don't have the full ordinance in front of us. And so if you look at prohibited uses, there are 11 prohibited uses that are pretty comprehensive. So I'm just unclear what uses we're concerned about that are going to be allowed that aren't already on the prohibited use list. So
As I understand it, and Councilor Friedrichs can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the PFAS leaking and seeping out of systems, as we don't currently have a way to filter that out in stormwater runoff.
Sure, but one of the prohibited uses is all industrial uses. So I think those would be the uses that would potentially use PFAS to
Certainly, but I
process
think they're
it.
finding that dish soap and laundry detergent and normal residential consumables are also adding enough PFAS to the bulk. I'm not an expert, and I'm understanding surface level concepts and trying to make a decision, but that's as I understand it. Councilor Friedrichs can correct me if I'm incorrect.
May I make a request for when we have the public hearing that the package should include all of 175-86 so that the council can see for ourselves what the regulations will be if what they are now and what they will be if this amendment is adopted.
Good idea.
Could we also put some street names on the maps that we are showing?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think
Councilor
I
Friedrichs?
concur, and I just feel that this has come before the council a little bit undercooked, and I would appreciate it if DPW had a chance to review the revised ordinance language and provide input before the public hearing or in time for the public hearing, and then a map include not just right now the map that's shown includes the areas that have town sewer, but we do not have a map that shows the overlay district. So I think we would need to see a complete, the complete ordinance with all of the information, because right now it seems a little conflicting that under F1 it says all uses permitted in the underlying zoning district and those regulated as conditional uses pursuant to Article 7. That sounds like it conflicts with then this list of prohibited uses. So I think there's very incomplete information, and I would just appreciate a complete ordinance, comments from DPW, a map that not only shows where town sewer and water is, but a map that shows the overlay district and the uses that we are looking at as, we are signing off as being okay to filter back into our drinking water.
Okay.
I believe that on the map that's provided on the second page of this item in the packet, the affected areas are the areas that are hatched in green on the map. Am I correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll vote first on the amendment. Council Register.
No.
Darrell Ford, nay.
Sally Udell, nay.
Wayne Burton, nay.
Eric Lund, nay.
Joe Friedman, nay.
Robin vote nay.
Councilor Friedrich.
Nay.
Okay, now on the first motion to have the first reading, Councilor Vogt.
Robin vote yay.
Joe Friedman, yes.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Udell, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Councilor Friedrich.
I will say aye, but I do hope there's some more information in time for that public hearing.
Okay. 8C on the agenda. I will start it off by moving that the
Thank you, Mr.
town
Mayor.
council, upon recommendation of the administrator, adopt resolution 2025-08, creating the Wagon Hill Farm Heritage Expendable Trust.
Second.
Second from Councilor Lund, and is there discussion?
It's nice to have something positive on here. I think this is a wonderful thing that's going on, and I just want to bring it to the public's attention that creating this historic resource trust moves our project to a next level, and I think it's really worthwhile for everyone who's in Durham who appreciates historic preservation to think about contributing to the trust. I think that's why they set it up. Work is going well up there. I'm up there a lot, and it's really coming around. And I think this is something the town's going to be very proud of. And to be part of that, they probably haven't decided whether they're going to have naming opportunities or anything like that yet. But anyway, that's why I just wanted to point out and emphasize that this is a great step forward. In an era of negative information, this is a good one.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Register?
I want to also echo favor for this. I think it's a fantastic idea to get private funds to help preserve and protect our heritage. And I know Ms. Singer was very adamant about how she was going to pull funds from a lot of enthusiastic and historically minded individuals, and I think that is awesome. My one caution is that I have seen public funds and public matching mentioned in this council communication, and that does concern me. I want to make certain that this is simply for private individuals to push money to preserve our local history and not a step into another conversation where we're pulling a significant amount of funds from our budget and putting it towards this again.
The former.
Any other comments? Administrator
Well,
Stelling.
since it was pulled out, so it's the former is the answer, but since it was pulled off the agenda, we are working now to figure out the right mechanism for people to be able to make donations. Someone could, of course, write a check, but we're trying to make it easier through something like PayPal or a GoFundMe kind of initiative, and that's a little bit outside of the town's comfort zone, so we're trying to figure out how that might work and the right mechanism. So it's an
Awesome.
ongoing discussion.
Thank you.
But we wanted to get this set up first.
And would these funds be held by the trustee of the trust funds?
Yes, they'd be held by the trustees of the trust funds, and the agents to expend would be the Heritage Commission.
Take a vote. Councilor Register.
Curtis Register, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sally Udell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
And I believe
And,
Emily is, Councilor Friedrichs is not online anymore?
There she is.
No, they are.
Okay, sorry. Councilor Friedrichs, were you able to hear the discussion or the vote, the motion?
Yes, I said aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. We have tonight a number of committee appointments. We feel quite fortunate to have so many good, well-qualified committee members. And shall we take them one at a time? Is that how it's
Yes.
typically done? Would someone like to make a motion to recommend that the town council reappoint Marty Goose of 9 Meadow Road and appoint Joe Warzen of 102 Madbury Road and Laura Mason of 129 Durham Point Road to fill 3 alternate memberships on the Library Board of Trustees with term expirations of April 26th.
You just made that motion, and I will second it.
Okay. Are any of, are any of them here would like to say something? We know that
Yeah,
Joe
Joe just
Warzen
spoke,
was
yeah.
here earlier. Okay. Please.
I'll just
Please.
say hello.
Yes.
Please step up to a microphone.
So the residents can hear.
What's that? Oh, okay. Well, this is my first volunteer opportunity, so is there anything specific you would like me to tell you when I introduce myself?
Does anybody?
Relevant experience?
Relevant
Oh,
experience,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I can start with my education. I have a bachelor's degree in English literature and one in anthropology, and I have a master's degree in writing that I got here at UNH.
Heck yeah.
So I've been a resident for 20 years, big user of the library. Wanted to do something to support the library. It's obviously incredibly important to our community, especially right now. And saw the volunteer opportunities in the town updates, and so many people saying, you need to volunteer, you need to get involved. And so all of that effort's working. And I've been to 2 meetings so far, 2 board meetings. I've met Cheryl and some of the staff, and I've used the library for years, and even I was surprised at how much the library really has to offer and how many programs there are. And so very just eye-opening for me, and I'm even more excited than I was when I first, filled out the paperwork, so.
Thank you.
Appreciate your willingness.
I think, I'm not sure you gave your name in the beginning. You are Laura Mason, right?
Laura Mason, yes.
Okay, thank you.
For the record. Any other conversation or question? Counselor vote. We'll take a vote.
Robin, vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nedell, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Councilor Friedrichs?
And Friedrichs, aye.
Thank
Do you
you.
want me to read the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move that the town council, upon recommendation of the Integrated Waste Management Advisory Committee Chair, move regular member Janet Perkins Howland to an alternate membership and move alternate member Susan Richmond to a regular membership on IWMAC, retaining their current term expirations.
I second.
They're not new to IMAX, so I don't know that.
Okay. They're not here, so we'll go ahead and have a vote. Counselor
Curtis Register, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sally Nedell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin, vote aye.
Counselor Friedrichs? Not here, so
Oh, no.
No, here she comes.
I think Friedrich said aye.
okay.
You did just said aye, yes.
Aye.
Counselor Ford?
I'd like to move that the town council, upon recommendation of the Conservation Commission Chair, appoint alternate member Jacob Craig to an unexpired regular membership on the Conservation Commission with a term expiration of April 2028.
Do you want to go ahead and read D as well? Can that be in the same?
Sure.
or would you
Shall the
wish-
town, I move that the town council, upon recommendation of the Conservation Commission Chair, appoint Benjamin Phelps, 341 Lee Hook Road, to an unexpired alternate membership on the Conservation Commission with a term expiration of April 2027.
I will second both motions.
Thank you, Counselor Lund. Are either of them here?
Ben is here.
Please.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Glad to see we didn't scare you off.
No, you didn't. Benjamin Phelps, 341 Lee Hook Road. This is a first kind of opportunity to volunteer for the town, so I'm looking forward to it. My relevant experience, I guess, is I spend a lot of time in public spaces, woods, hunting, fishing, hiking, things like that, and I want to see that those places continue to be part of our community.
Well, thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We'll vote on those motions. Counselor Vogt?
Robin Vogt, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Von Friedrichs, aye.
Thank you. I move that the town council nominate resident Jim Hornbeck of 19 Woodridge Road for a three-year reappointment by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Commissioner as Durham's representative to the Oyster River Local Advisory Committee.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Ford. Is Mr. Hornbeck here? Nope. Any other comments? Councilor Register? Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin Vogt, aye.
Von Friedrichs, aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I will move that the Durham Town Council does hereby nominate resident Matt Lake, 266 New Market Road, for a 3-year appointment by the NHDES Commissioner as a Durham representative to the Lamprey River Advisory Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Vogt. Is
Is Mr. Lake
Mr. Lake present?
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Matt Lake. I live at 266 New Market Road, which is on the Lamprey River. Resident of Durham now for about 6 years, from New Hampshire. The Lamprey is a phenomenal resource. I didn't know a lot about it when I was growing up here, and I've come to really appreciate it. And all the communities that abut the river as well, I think they care a lot for it. And I had a chance to attend one of the meetings last week for the advisory committee. Seems like a very, very passionate group of people who want to do the right thing to try and protect this resource so that it can be continually enjoyed by many for years to come. And I'd like to be part of that. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
You've got the name for it.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll start with Councilor Friedrichs on the motion.
Von Friedrichs, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Eric Lund, oh, sorry.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin Vogt, aye.
Thank you. And I appreciate all of that willingness to serve Durham. As I said, quite fortunate to have such talent on our commissions and committees.
Absolutely.
We now have a presentation from the business manager, Gail Jablonski, on a quarterly financial report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have good news as always. We're doing great. We are at 21.3% expended for the first quarter, and that was even with quite an interesting winter. We were able to maintain it, and all the other departments are doing well. The other divisions, water, sewer. We have had no crises come up to us yet. Nobody's saying, I know, and knock on wood.
My dog barking.
So our audit was conducted. They're now doing the review phase in the office, doing all the paperwork and the backup. And that's all I have to report.
Are there any areas of concern?
I have seen none.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Just,
Councilor Nino?
Yeah, curious. The library fund,
Yes,
revenues, do those come in?
it's just a transfer between the, on the
the
books,
town
and we just haven't done the transfer
Okay.
yet.
On the Churchill Rink Fund, the difference between the 26% last year at 331 and 17%? I understand they had a better year, so I'm not sure why they changed. It seems like it's not.
the season, it's a season versus the fiscal year. So they had a great season, but as far as the fiscal year, it's only the January, February, March. So it will pick up. And he
Right.
could have some outstanding that he hasn't shown us yet.
I see, okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
Like, I can just, Gail and I met with Bill Page and Rachel Kozowski earlier today to talk about the finances of the past season, and as Gail noted, it was very positive. Strong season.
Fantastic.
Any other comments or questions?
Thanks, good.
All right.
That was about the easiest part I've heard you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job keeping things on track.
Yes.
Staying out of prison.
All right. So this is a time for the roundtable. And we'll start with you, Counselor Register.
Roger. For the Agricultural Commission, they met on the 14th of April, and we went over the results of the survey that was pushed out to the residents. We had around 151 respondents, which is relatively low given the area, but the good news is it was all over Durham. It wasn't just at UNH's campus or just in the rural region of the town. It was densely populated in downtown, and then we had about 25% outlying districts reporting in as well, which is actually encouraging to me because that means that folks that lived in the downtown area wanted to see more agricultural move into Durham, more local food growth production. And of those 151, about 54 asked to follow on information for more information on a local food growth co-op. And so Food Together Durham continues to be something we're striving to make a reality. And I think the residents have indicated that there is a real interest in understanding. And the way the survey was broken out, it was strongly agree, slightly agree, neutral, slightly disagree, strongly disagree. Of the votes, in those 151 votes, there were less than 10 total in the strongly disagree and the slightly disagree category, and a hefty chunk were in the neutral position, which indicates to me that given good salesmanship and good mentorship, those neutrals are receptive to expanding understanding of local food production and agricultural being a more normalized part of our day-to-day lives. And so that was very encouraging, I think. Additionally, we talked about the significant impact to bees and how pollinators are taking a significant hit across the country. Lee Alexander noted that with his connection to a national study asset, around 60 to 75% of bees are dying in the country, not just in Durham, and 90% loss in Durham with Lee Alexander's personal experience, and he's been doing this for around a half a century. Said this was the worst season he's ever seen, and we can probably anticipate those challenges to continue to exacerbate. And so what that means is potentially we need to eyeball more strict or more lenient ordinances for pollinator plants. We need to talk about potential pesticide impacts and how we can use more natural ways of discouraging undesirable pests without killing our pollinators off, because the pollinators mean the food. Besides that, August 16th is Farm Day, and I will continue to beat that drum. I did have some offline questions I have to bring up in regards to town council goals that the Agricultural Commission had some curiosities for. If you'll notice on the town council goals, I removed the 30% national or regional food growth goal. Talking with the Agricultural Commission, they view that as unattainable. It's too amorphous of a target, and particular to New Hampshire with our deficit with how much we bring in for food as opposed to locally grown food, it was not realistic for Durham to even come a percentage point or two into that category. So reattack that to make it a little bit more Durham specific while still expanding or trying to find a language to expand food awareness and local food production. And pending any questions for the Agricultural Commission, that is what I have.
Question, are we on track for the farmers market to begin the first Monday in June?
As far as I'm well, Seacoast is still doing the farmers markets on time. I think they closed their survey a couple weeks ago, and they had their respondents and based their timing on those answers. So I don't have the specific dates and times, but
They're
Todd says
they're
we're
a
good,
go.
so we're good.
They're a go this
They're a
season.
go.
Yeah,
And I think the hours stayed the same,
I think so.
2:30 to 6, I think.
So the
forget,
situation
but
with the
around
bees, Durham sounds like it's way out of, way out of the average at 90%. Is there any, are you looking into it further, like what is happening? Is something different happening here than, say, in Dover or in Portsmouth or in?
So when the bee, so he did do
Manchester?
like a NCIS for bees. I didn't know you could do that, but there is a national institute that you can send samples of bee corpses in, and they'll do an analysis on what killed the hive. I believe it was fungus, new bacteria, and heat that was causing what the significant casualties for the beehives. I'm not 100% on all that, but that was what was briefed to me, was that there was a new type of bacteria that was now threatening the bees, a new type of fungus that had killed one of the hives. And so these are all cascading impacts of an unchecked environmental change.
And is the mortality rate in Durham reflective of what's going on in New Hampshire, or at least the New Hampshire seacoast, or is it something specific to Durham?
That's a good question I don't have an answer for. I can ask that question in an email.
Right. I mean, if there's something we could do about it, but if it's, as Councilor Lund said, just part of what's happening in New Hampshire, if there's any guidance that, or suggestions, I'm sure we'd like to hear them. And one suggestion you made was, I think there's a whole list of invasive species that you can't do anymore. Is that part of contributing to it, that those invasive species also attract bees, and maybe not the worst thing to be banning? You mentioned something about.
Yep, so like milkweed for monarch butterflies and stuff like that, making sure we're not mowing over that when we're doing clear cutting of normal lawn maintenance. DPW already does this in a certain capacity. Now, our awareness of that local ordinance and those efforts may be more surface level, but those are specific actions that I know about. And I know cultivating more residential gardens would be an asset. Making sure we're having green belts when we create new facilities and new developments is another way to make sure we're doing that. I don't have a comprehensive list, but off the top of my head, those are the things I have heard in passing as I'm either discussing with the Agricultural Commission or sitting in on climate activism opportunities.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything further to report?
I need to report the school board situation, but I apologize, I am unprepared for that at this time.
Councilor Ford?
The Conservation Commission has not met since our last meeting. Next meeting is a week from tonight in this room, and I'll be happy to report following that.
Councilor Nadell?
Okay. Let's see, IMAC had a meeting last Wednesday. We had got another update from Sam Hewitt, Assistant DPW Director. And he was giving us an update on the trucks, the toters, solid waste management on the whole. I gave you a long explanation, I think, at the last meeting. And the DPW is in a holding pattern regarding the toters and the trucks. Labrie, the company that builds the split body trucks that we would like to purchase, is actually planning to shift their split body manufacturing to their U.S. plant, but the timing of that move isn't known. I think, Todd, you mentioned in those Friday updates, or just a note to councilors, this may be a time when talking about the purchase of toters and trucks, the same time that we might be looking at introducing a new curbside plan. And Public Works is investigating the possibility of contracting out curbside pickup to Waste Management or another company, possibly on a temporary basis, if Waste Management would agree to such a plan. There are multiple reasons for this. The trucks are constantly in need of repair. We have some old garbage collection trucks, which means that they have a member of the staff who's pretty much full-time with those trucks and not able to do other things. We usually have 4 staff for the transfer station. 3 staff are not working currently, so And one of those is the new supervisor, and then there's the, who needs to be hired, and 2 staff on disability who may not return to work at the DPW. So not having people to actually do this work is difficult. And I think we saw the MOU that Retrain put together to try to patch that together for the time being. So contracting out would not require Durham to purchase new trucks or hire garbage truck drivers, saving the town funds. The town would be expected to purchase the toters, and the costs would also be fixed and not need adjustment for maintenance fees and lack of staff. However, the town would lose some of the flexibility in meeting curbside issue and actually control of those contract fees. So not sure where that would go, but it's just maybe the time right now to look at, I think, is actually returning to contracting out curbside service. So it's frustrating for the DPW. It's frustrating for IMAC that really wants to, move on ahead and get these things handled. But these are the higher priorities right now. And our swap shop report, our first 3 swap shop days were pretty wet, but we still got a lot of things. But it's much more challenging to try to run the swap shop when you can't actually spread things out on the tables and they come at you. But we managed just fine. The volunteers deserve a lot of credit for that. Saturday we did have good weather, and it was crazy.
Yes, it was.
So my husband and I were there in the afternoon, and we think that there's a good chance that more left than came in. So there's still room for everything. So anyways, off to a great start, and lots of happy people being able to bring in things, and lots of people taking home some great treasures. So.
I just wanted to add some reinforcing comments to your talk about the DPW being short-staffed. They have 1 individual from permanent staff that has been doing this the whole time, and the highway division has been augmenting with jumping on trucks, and they're not trained for, they're not paid for. They are paid for it, but they're not. That's not their billet description. And they've been doing this, including Sam Hewitt and the operations manager for the highway division. So just for your essay, the council threw them a pizza party today. And we also gave them thank you notes to help keep their morale up and the knowledge that we are doing, we are aware of the ongoing issues, and we're trying to help, we're trying to do our part to make sure we know their extra efforts and that they're very, very much so appreciated.
Nice.
Can I ask in relation to this, to Administrator Selig, are we heading into an emergency situation with trash pickup? It sounded like it's affecting morale, it's affecting the workflow, possibly morale. Perhaps people are rethinking their commitment. Are we in an emergency situation at this point?
I think we're trying to take thoughtful actions now to ensure we don't end up in an emergency maybe later this summer or in the fall. So hopefully by that time we'll have a good plan in place and be able to move forward in a way that works for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think maybe just a comment for the residents to be a little bit more kind and a little bit more understanding if your trash isn't picked up as quickly as you want, or if certain services like sidewalk clearing or curbside pickup isn't going the way you want it to. It's not because people are lazy. It's not because people aren't doing their jobs. It's because there are some hardworking individuals that are overtaxed and understaffed.
Just as an example to this, we had a couple of citizens who came in last week concerned about patching potholes from the winter, and what went through my mind was like, we have nobody to send. I'm sorry, but we have no one to send to fix that right now. So please be patient.
Yep.
Councilor Burton.
I think, thank you, Mr. Chair. The bees, I think, their mortality started skyrocketing when people started using more pesticides. And the top, Roundup was the top killer. And because they get foul brood, it's called American foul brood. And so anyone you've got to find a way to take care of the bees because they pollinate everything else. We lost our hives that way several years ago. I won't dwell on the legislature. I'm very worried about the school budget. Remember that on your tax bill, that is what, 60-something%. It could really gyrate depending on what the legislature does. There are several bills that would cause it to increase a lot. We're trying to stop that. We, the minority party. we did kill a bill that would cap school budgets at 5%, because that would have been really tragic to have that happen. If you had an expensive IEP, you'd have to take the money out of the rest of the budget, that sort of thing. And so there's a lot going on, and I had a long talk with the superintendent today and the woman who runs their budget, and they are very concerned. They have no way of predicting how this is going to work out. And the governor has a much higher revenue estimate than the House had, and we're waiting for April numbers to find out how that is. It's a dicey situation. And we did restore the elder commission in New Hampshire that they took out. As I looked around the legislature, I could see why. Got some.
Don't look at me.
Yeah. We restored the Arts Council and some other things. But I'll just try to keep you informed, because I don't know where this is going to end.
Thank you. Councilor Lund?
Okay, yeah, the planning board had a regular meeting on April 9th and a workshop session on April 16th. I was not present at the April 9th meeting, so I will have to leave that update to Councilor Grant when she returns. With respect to the workshop, we discussed a number of zoning amendments that are either currently in the process or have recently been through the process. We also had a discussion on the plan unit development zoning amendment, which we expect that will go to a public hearing before the planning board sometime in May, and will likely come before the council in June. And that's all I have.
Thank you. At the last Parks and Rec meeting, the Parks and Rec Committee approved their goals for 2025. The next meeting will be tomorrow, and there'll be a presentation on the proposed new rink and facility, which we will then undoubtedly be sharing with this council after that. Public Works, Parks and Recreation is also, will be presenting the findings from the consultant from the University of New Hampshire on our Jackson's Landing and Woodridge Park, and expect that within the next month or two to be presented here. The Seacoast Economic Development stakeholders will actually not be meeting tomorrow. Instead, they'll be getting a presentation on daycare and its impact and the issues in New Hampshire, and specifically in the Seacoast. And I'll also save most of my comments for the next section under unfinished business and downtown zoning changes. Councilor Bowe.
Sure. So, a couple of things. The Energy Committee had not met this past week, but they will be meeting on May 6th at 7 p.m. here in Council Chambers. Looking forward to that. Human Rights Commission met on the 17th. They elected a new chair, but I want to shout out, of course, Councilor Nadell for coming in and closing it out, and all of her amazing work as chair of the committee for that time and going into the past. And of course, we elected a new chair, Richard Belshaw. So Richard's very excited about taking on that role. Got right into it. We had quite an agenda during the day that I'm going to break down here. The big part of the Human Rights Commission meeting was Chief Kelly came in alongside his team to talk about just the recent news and things that we are hearing about ICE detentions and the effects on UNH and in the town specifically. I know as a council, we had grave concerns about these items, so bringing it before Human Rights Commission made the most sense from our past conversations. So we were lucky enough to have Chief Kelly and his team come. And I want to thank Councilor Friedrichs for sending in questions ahead of time and having Chief Kelly take a look at those as well, because it really informed our conversation and some of the future questions that I had and that Councilor Friedrichs and the entire commission had. But just in summary, based on some of the responses, some of the questions, and Councillor Friedrichs is more than happy to chime in at any point, as she was a major part of that questioning and conversations during the commission meeting. But just in summary of what Chief Kelly had said in response, just overall, Chief Kelly he expressed frustrations and concerns with the continued choices by the federal government in terms of how hard it's made Durham kind of look at what's going on in the community and the stories that have been shared with council members and folks. He expressed a lot of concern about that, and he wanted to make sure that the public knew that Durham Police alongside UNH Police are taking every effort to ensure the public safety and to make sure that folks understand that they want them to be, any suspicious situation or anything that looks concerning, to please report it to UNH Police, Durham Police. That seemed to be the top takeaway from that specifically. But taking a look just, that Durham Police does not enforce federal law, only directives from the local and the state. That was made very clear during a lot of the conversations. They do not authorize nor approve federal agencies accessing files. That was a big conversation point, that if there were any movements to access files of folks here in Durham or any records of any kind, that they would need special permission, not only from the Attorney General's office, but from a state office specifically to access those files. So Chief Kelly was very clear in that there would not be any direct access along any means. Taking a look, there's I guess so many notes around this, that letting the Durham Police know, UNH Police know if they see any suspicious activity, and that going forward, if there is any kind of reporting or if they are asked as a police force to assist in any specific situation that may involve ICE or may look like it would involve ICE, that Chief Kelly and his team would directly contact the Attorney General's office for guidance along how they are to assist or not assist in that situation. So there's a chain of command that is followed that essentially would hinder any direct operation and or give some research background to that. There is no reason, unfortunately, ICE does not need to contact Durham Police or UNH Police if they are to run an operation such as this, which is really unfortunate. But he did express frustrations with that and how that does kind of hinder his team from understanding what is going on in these very uncertain, difficult times. He said that they will continue to put the safety of residents first again, and that he did give the council authority if we foresee any continuing concerns from residents or need additional directives that come from public concern, that we can forward those on to him. We can pass ordinances, and that we make sure that those conversations continue, not just through the Human Rights Commission, but that we continue the conversations here in the council as well. So,
ICE pulled a man from his car in Dover, claimed he was illegal, took him to the Stratford County Jail where he's currently incarcerated.
Yes.
No one believes he's committed a crime. It's because the delegation is trying to find out, because our contract with ICE only allows the Stratford County to jail people who have committed a crime and been convicted. But this man is now in jail with the general population, and we have asked the commissioner to explain what is going on there. There was no coordination with any local police or anything else. I think the guy's married, he's been in the area for 3 years, and ICE has not responded to, because, and the delegation has been watching this closely. We're waiting for an explanation of what happened.
right.
It's very scary.
Scary's the word. I think to add some supporting comments to that as well. I was very pleased with Chief Kelly coming in. He came in full force. He had the deputy chief and his captain, who's going to be the next deputy chief. This is not a sidebar conversation. This is the command climate and the direction of the police department in Durham. And I was also very pleased to hear Chief Kelly unequivocally say that the police department goes after criminals, not folks of immigration status, varying levels. It does not matter. And though they do run plates every time they check every time they stop somebody. The flag is for criminal behavior, convicted felon, murder, a hit and run, not on your immigration status. And as there are folks in Durham that are scared, there are folks in Durham that have received letters from ICE and Homeland saying their revocation of their immigration status and they must self-deport immediately. And those letters are terrifying to receive. And you don't know, as we've seen in the news, they've been going out to U.S. citizens as well. So you don't know how serious they are, if they're just a psychological intimidation tactic to get people to leave without any effort. What that does mean to me is, one, Durham police is not your enemy. Durham police is here to protect and serve the residents of Durham, not play battles with politics. And two, as always, check in on your immigrant neighbors. They're not doing good.
Absolutely. And just to back up that point from Councilor Register, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I took from this, as we've heard a lot of these stories and consistently hear conversations within our communities about, being scared about leaving the country and coming back. Stories from faculty at UNH who go and travel overseas for work and may come back or may not come back in a certain way because they're worried that either a visa is going to be revoked or they may not be welcomed back in general. I think what Councilor Register said there is right on the money, and I also want to elevate the importance that I think in these uncertain times and what Chief Kelly kind of outlined and kind of what our responsibility here is on the council as well, through the Human Rights Commission, but also through the public coming and speaking about these items as well. I highly encourage folks, if they have concerns or even through somebody else, if you do not feel comfortable doing it yourself, there are people in the community that are willing to step up and willing to share that voice with you and give you that platform. So I just want to be sure that, coming out of that meeting and whatever else, we recognize that, yes, Durham Police is here to serve. Durham Police is here alongside UNH Police, according to Chief Kelly, to really back up the citizens. But if you are uncertain or if you are scared, that I think there is community around you, and I want to make that very clear, that there is community that can help you out in that way, and we want to know about it, not just as a council, but at the Human Rights Commission as well.
Of course, the crime, the federal government is extorting money from our school system. They threatened to withhold funds from Oyster River School District because we're violating their DEI rules, which are so vague, no one can interpret them. Mm-hmm. And that's when your federal government is the extortionist. That's what makes me nervous.
Sure.
Councilor Friedrichs, do you have a report?
Sure. I wanted to first just add on a little bit to what had already been shared about the discussion at the Human Rights Commission, and just amplify that, yes, it's not a theoretical exercise. There are already people in Durham who are being affected, who have had their visa status changed to a deportable category. There are folks who, on my street, there's a family where one of the adults is working at UNH, their children are in the school system, and the other adult travels back and forth for business unrelated to the university, but they are not citizens, and it's a very real fear that one parent could be separated from the rest of the family, and as well as more active situations of people losing their refugee status and now being on a deportation list, who are current Durham residents. I'm very grateful to DPD for being, making themselves available and answering questions. I think what came out of this as well, though, is that there is a chain of command, and the Durham police, while they are, they answer to the town council and to Durham residents, they are expected to follow and enforce federal law and state law. One of the points that came up, and I bring up this level of detail because I wonder if the town council would like to spend more time thinking about this. But I asked, Chief Kelly if it was a practice to check and see whether there was a warrant out for someone's arrest before being willing to back up or assist federal agencies that are coming in to enact or to take any actions within Durham's municipal boundaries, if they would check whether a warrant has been issued before agreeing to assist or provide backup. And there's not an official policy about that at this point, and I think that it may be worth the town council having a discussion around that, and also a discussion around the fact that as of last Friday, it is now a federal crime to not register your information with the federal database as a green card holder or other immigrant status. And so although you may be pulled over by the Durham police for a minor traffic violation or something like that, if you have not updated your information correctly as a non-citizen and added yourself to this federal database correctly, you are now actually a criminal. That is the federal policy. And Chief Kelly did share that the Durham police are able to see what charges are being levied against you when they run your information, and it says that you are wanted for a crime, so they can differentiate. Are you being wanted for an aggravated assault, or are you being wanted because you didn't file your status correctly with the new requirements? But I think that it may be worth having a larger conversation with the town council about ways that we can support the DPD in actively protecting our residents and visitors. So I don't know if the town council wants to speak to that at all, whether this should be a future agenda item.
Councilor Regis?
Are you still going?
I have, one other update, but maybe this could be a conversation connected with goals. I wasn't sure if oftentimes the roundtable is an opportunity to bring up concerns and see if there's interest at the town council level in further discussion of them.
So if I could interject before we continue, just to support your point, because I do think this is an area of concern, and I definitely want to have a clear path forward, because I don't want Durham to be a victim. I want it to be a position to protect its residents, and I want it to be positioned to take criminals and put them in jail. I think one area of clarification that we are going to need to know is whether Durham police enforce federal laws or state laws. I was under the impression that Durham Police Department has an obligation to the state constitution, and it has no obligation to the federal constitution or federal law. Is that correct, Mr. Selig?
Right, Durham police do not enforce federal law,
Yep.
state law and local ordinances.
So the immigration status stuff should not be a concern. That doesn't mean it's not. That doesn't mean that it can't be. And I definitely am very favorable in potentially putting a workshop team together of town councilors to go and try to interrogate what tools we have access to with Durham Police, with local ordinances, as well as with the Attorney General, because this is not going to be just a Durham problem. This is going to be a statewide problem. And not only is ICE setting a bad example for law enforcement in general, because they're coming up unidentified, snatching people off the street, Home Alone style, but they're encouraging vigilante violence, which we've already seen in Massachusetts, where a Proud Boy affiliate snagged an individual out of their car with a sledgehammer and drug him to a detainment center and tried to turn him in as an ICE agent. This is going to be more challenging than just us abiding by federal law. And I think that is something that folks need to understand, is that this type of unregulated, uncommunicated, and unclear detainment of residents is causing violence. And that violence could very much so come to Durham. And so I definitely am very supportive of, not tonight, but in a future date, we're getting a workshop team of counselors together and to poll with Administrator Selig, the Durham Police Chief, and whatever, an attorney or whatever asset we have at the town level, and try to come up with a plan to help mitigate these circumstances. Thank you, Councilor Friedrich.
Do you have anything further to report or say? Counselor Friedrichs?
Sure. I was not able to attend the land stewardship subcommittee due to illness, and the minutes are not out from that yet, so I don't have new information to report there other than what was available in the agenda, which everyone has already received. And I do want to mention, I guess, in connection with the question about what is killing off the bees, I have been in contact with Diana Carroll and James Bubar and some other Durham residents or residents of neighboring towns, including some lighting experts from UNH, looking at lighting and the effect that lighting has on insects and insect death, and how that may affect pollinators or other types of insects. And so in addition to kind of the pesticides, there are a lot of complex factors, climate change, new bacteria, new fungi, heat stroke that affects insects, but also things like being willing to leave leaves on your, in your yard that allows insects to overwinter more successfully. I know that, different, the Conservation Committee has really expressed its support of No Mow May in the past. So there are different strategies for supporting native plants and allowing our ecosystems to have the protection of a more native landscape. But we're also beginning to discuss a little bit, what ideas there might be for a lighting ordinance, and that's something that has come up before the planning board in the past as well. So hopefully there's a productive discussion there and may come up with some useful suggestions in the near future.
Thank you. Mr. Selly?
All right. So I really worked hard last week to include my updates as part of the Friday updates. So I would just direct people there. The only other thing I'll note is that in my employment contract, one of the things that it affords me to do is to do writing. And given all the things that are happening in this world, I've been starting to do that more. So I'm currently working on something, trying to do kind of a social commentary on what's happening across America, some of the things we touched on tonight, but tying it back to local values, such as those espoused in Durham's goals and values statement. So stay tuned, see how that comes across. But I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. In unfinished business, and now a discussion of the draft 2025-2026 Town Council goals. I will say we would like to follow the protocol of please try to let everybody speak before you speak twice, and try to be concise and not say the same thing twice too, if we could do that, because we have a lot to, it looks like quite a lot to get to. Does anybody else have any suggestions on how we start or continue this conversation on town council goals? Council register?
Maybe we have the individuals that submitted their goals pitch their particular adjustments in sequence. And
I think that's a good idea.
That way we're not having so much back and forth and missed communications.
Yes. Any other suggestions? Yes, Councilor Nato?
I did not get my information in, and I actually have something I'd like to share that might come before that discussion. If that's possible, I'd be happy to go first.
Okay. Mr. Seller?
I just wanted to observe something that I thought was interesting, which was that more or less the main headers of the goals have remained intact.
That's correct.
A few minor, nits and lights and updates, and one final item, number 8. But I just thought that was an interesting observation.
Any other overview questions or comments? Well, why don't we start, Councilor Register's suggestion, we'll have each person that did write something say what they have to say and take it from there. So
if I can jump in first, that'd be great.
Would be great, yes.
I did make copies of what I've done, and I didn't hand them out ahead of time because I wanted to be able to explain information that goes with shop value. So I was looking at the suggestions for the goals and talk about priorities. Got me thinking. So when I looked at what came in, got me digging a little bit more in my brain. When I was in 7th grade, I had a fabulous science teacher. And one of the activities she had us do was describe the person we were sitting next to. So you'd write down, blue eyes, red eyes. He's got all his teeth, things like, pierced ears or freckles, something like that. And then she said, so then she took this information and she drew it on the board. And you'd get like eyes. Nobody had legs, nobody had a nose, nobody had ears. Like we weren't really describing the whole picture. So I thought, do we have core principles? Do we have core priorities? In other words, in some institutions, they would call these absolutes. That these are things that, under the circumstances, when we don't know what's going on in the country, and in Durham, that maybe we should be really clear about those things that we support, regardless of what those other goals might be. I tried to be somewhat comprehensive here, and yet I did leave out some things that other people might feel should go in, but this is the list because I know that people on DCAT aren't being able to follow, nor is Councilor Friedrichs. So I'm thinking that the core principles, the core priorities, which would come, like after the mission, but before the goals, the things that are really steadfast. The town of Durham will provide public health and safety, police and fire protection, safe drinkable water, and safe sewers and wastewater treatment systems, IT, cybersecurity. The town government will include town administration, town planning office, business office, clerk's office, IT, particularly for website and community communications maintenance and code enforcement. Public Works Department will oversee infrastructure, maintenance and improvements, manage sanitation and solid waste, maintain proper stormwater drainage, provide ice and snow removal, maintain town buildings and grounds, maintain roads and sidewalks, manage traffic control. The town of Durham will have a free and accessible public library, which sort of also can act as a community hub. We will continue to have active collaborative work with UNH, and town personnel will be given compensation that is fair and competitive with surrounding towns, necessary and appropriate equipment outfitted to perform their duties, such as fire trucks, cars, dump trucks and plows, etc., will exist. Working conditions will support their job expectations, and personal safety equipment and clothing and training to maintain high standards. That these, like none of these appear in our goals. Our goals are those things that go beyond these, but they seem like we should be acknowledging that if if the administration has to make a decision, these are the things that we don't have room to prioritize. And then, so separately from that, I noticed that goal 3A that has to do with our taxes had no changes to it. So this is my suggestion. The administrator, town business manager, and town council working together will continue to make an effort to control spending, enhance revenues, broaden the tax base, and explore innovative ways to stabilize or reduce the tax rate while taking into account, first, potential increases in expenses due to inflation, tariffs, and/or loss of federal or state funding, yearly increases in personnel earning and benefits, growing costs needed for the purchase of necessary safety and public works equipment in order to implement projects for safety of residents and to make improvements to the town's infrastructure, and lastly, taking into account the $463,000 from the undesignated fund balance that we used to reduce the 2025 property taxes. I mean, I think these are things that I think we need to look at the whole picture and not narrow our choices down too drastically when we're looking at how we want to set goals for next year's budgeting. And then I also suggest that when we go through the goals, we decide to whom that goal is meant to go to. In other words, is this something that sounds like it's coming from the Agricultural Commission? Should they be writing resolutions or making changes to ordinances? Is this something that town administrator owns? Like, this is a goal that nobody else can take on, that sort of thing. Does it belong to the planning board? In other words, these goals are not an evaluation system that we use to evaluate personnel, the town administrator's job. This is the town, our goals as town councilors, and a chance for us to look at how well the town has done. But we also need to make sure that if we're asking something to happen as a goal, that we make really clear who owns that goal, because it's not always the town administration. So those are my 3 points I wanted to get across.
Should we have a discussion before we move on to, any questions for Councilor Nadell?
So I definitely like ownership of tasks. That's definitely something I'm in favor of. My question is, this is kind of like the form and function of government, and I assume we have some lease with the state that directs or municipalities to have specific functions of government based off the RSAs. Is that correct?
Well, we could look at our town code, and it outlines the
Right.
various
Because I find
functions
that
of
a lot of
government.
these stuff, like I know there's an RSA that maintains that a municipality must have a free library, right? That these are laws, not necessarily goals. as I
Right, and
understand it.
these are not goals. This would, like, if you look at the goal page, the first thing we have there is, where's mine? Mission, core values. Then my thought was, do we have core principles? Do we have core priorities? Do we have non-negotiables? Is also what you might hear them. Like, these are things that, I thought about myself as a resident of Durham. What are my expectations for Durham? This is my list. The rest of the goals, I don't necessarily even know are taking place. But I'm hoping that the town council recognizes this list is the things that I, as a resident, expect as the baseline for my living in Durham.
Yeah, no, I think I could get behind this as a quick reference with citations in the state of New Hampshire law attached to them, showing where you can find these codes and why Durham has to provide these services. I don't know that I would support these in conjunction with the core values of honesty and transparency and stuff like that. I think that would cause ambiguity because the
Yeah, well,
word...
those are values versus actual physical.
Certainly, yeah, no, I think, and just if we're having, so in my head, if I'm pulling this up right, and I can stop talking at any point in time as soon as someone says shut up. But, right now we have a mission statement, we have core values, and we have goals, and then we're gonna add priority to those goals, and now we're gonna add core principles, and now we start to get into a verbiage creep on which one takes priority or which one actually is the word that defines what we're trying to accomplish. If we keep these mutually exclusive, but more as a quick reference for folks who want to understand what we care about, not necessarily what we're focusing on conducting. Because I look at the goals as not so much as continuing tasks, because I think that causes consternation with some folks about, hey, they're always going to plow the road. We don't need to know if they plow the road. But there are some aspects of that we do kind of care about, right? If vehicle maintenance is down, that means we can't plow the road. That also means we can't do further construction. That also means we have to hire contracting, which is going to increase taxes. There are second and third order impacts that impact decision making. But knowing that they plow the road isn't necessarily one of them. It's the maintenance readiness of the fleet that matters. And so in my head, the goal should be oriented on challenges or decision points that we anticipate within the next funding year or the next 5 years of planning, specifically to housing development, revenue increase, environmental considerations. And I think that would make it, it's already wordy, and I know we have a lot of letter grades and people don't like necessarily getting too far in the weeds. But I found the goals, like you said previously, to be very useful in how they were, not only in how we were able to ask questions, but also in how the department heads were able to answer our questions in that format. And I am concerned that if we add this piece of paper to the goals and not as a quick reference guide on the website, which I would be 100% on board with, adding hey, snapshot, Durham provides these things, and this is why Durham provides these things, RSA blah, 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 RSA blah, 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 RSA blah, blah, blah. He told me to shut up, so someone else.
Can I just jump back? These are not goals. These are things that we expect to have happen. It's not that we're hoping that our goal will be that we're going to do more of the work of one sort of another that are our goals. These are not goals. This is, I live in Durham. These are my expectations that these things will happen. if the administrator has to make a choice between something that has to do with even the, I don't know, pick any goal here, has to look at creating conversations between citizens and town councilors versus making sure that we plow the roads. I want to see the roads get plowed. I'm assuming that as a resident, this is something I can expect, whereas the goals are things that would be wonderful to have, but I don't want to choose to spend money and energy on a goal and have to give up one of the things on this list in order to do that. So that's why I call it, I couldn't come up with the right term, that's why I call them non-negotiable goals. But they're not really goals, they are what we do. So is principle the right word? I don't know. Are they priorities? I don't know. And I just trying to put out there that I hope we're not, by looking only at the goals, we're forgetting about what is the basis of the town and how it functions. And if we have to make major cuts because we're not finding the funding that we're used to having, then what do we cut? I suggest we don't cut these. But I also think that in a situation where we have to make some really tough decisions, regardless of the goals we've set, I think Todd will come to us and say, Town Council, we need to make a decision where we're going to put our energy and our money. So it's just a thought. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just my way of thinking about this process and what I felt is missing in the goals, because we don't talk about these being important. We talk about our mission and our core values, but not the core of expectations for the town.
Any other comments? Councilor Lund?
Yes, I would concur with Councilor Register that there is merit to having a document like this, but it should be separate from the goals.
Sure, absolutely, because they're not goals, they're absolutes in my mind, sure.
And I would suggest that there seem to be some large missing pieces.
There are.
In terms of recreation, it seems that the town has an expectation that recreation opportunities are available to towns.
DCAT's not on that list.
Public, what's that?
DCAT is not on that list.
And the Human Rights Commission is not on that list as a safe place to take concerns over events of the day. And as well, when it says the town of Durham will provide, I do believe we provide schools for our school-age children, and it's not our role to have anything to do with that in a way,
right,
but the
it's not on
town
this.
does provide those, and that is an expectation. So I wondered how
Well, then
how
I
does
think
that fit or
I
not
think it'd
fit
be,
in this?
I think the school district does the same thing, do they not? They also list what are their principles that they stand by. So, again, just
But in
a
terms of
way of us to think
expectation.
about, when we're thinking about the goals, it was a process for me to think, what's really important in town? And there are some things that, push comes to shove, if the town couldn't do Parks and Rec the way we do it as a department now, and it became a volunteer thing, that would give it a different face, but might allow us to keep going, but would not have the same demands if we have to prioritize. So, anyways.
Thank you.
That's why I wanted to jump in first.
Sure.
Because I thought it'd be awkward to try to throw it in later.
I think Councilor Lund has some overview positions as well, reading what he presented, and perhaps you could present it to the group at this point.
Okay,
what your comments
yes,
were.
no, it's, I mean, when I was going through the goals list, I made some judgments as to which of the goals I thought were most important. I fully expect that some of you will disagree with my choices, but I laid them out there. I also made a distinction between short-term and long-term, short-term being things that we can reasonably expect to complete or nearly complete within the next 12 months versus longer term or things we need to keep on working at, but they won't necessarily be done within a year. So I see that in the document that was provided to us, some comments from Counselors Register and Vogt that were worked into that document.
Yeah.
So yeah, as an example, one of our goals has been about keeping the municipal tax rate in check. We used last year we had a goal to keep our 2025 municipal tax rate to 2024 plus inflation, and there is some merit to the goal, but I put that in category B because there may well be some other things that we consider more important, even if we have to raise taxes to do that. So
I'll be honest, I don't know all of the initials on this document. So
Okay,
I'm really
yeah,
brain,
okay,
I'm
yeah,
brain
no,
teasing
the-
my, like, I don't know everybody on the council, I don't know.
Right, okay, yeah. No, it's, my comments and my estimates of both short-term, long-term, and priority level A, B, or C were in blue. Robin's comments are in red, and Council Register, your comments were in green.
Any other comments about Councilor Lund's suggestions?
Oh, so yours is, LA means,
Long-term of high importance.
okay, now I'm understanding, those aren't names.
No.
Good to go.
No,
That's why you couldn't find
Really stressing out about my, I thought I was having dementia or something.
that was just shorthand for the two things that I said about whether I saw goals being short-term or long-term, and
Roger.
my estimate of importance.
I understand now, thank you very much.
I think it's important, excuse me, to keep in mind that Todd is a town administrator, not a town manager. And under that model, and it was purposely done that way, I think, Todd, because he has more authority. He has a job description. What we used to do was just give him the things you'd like him to accomplish in the next year. He's going to do his job well. He's not going to shift his priorities the way you don't want them, because he knows what they are anyway. But we're getting awfully complicated here. This is an observation from, but these, so anyway, we'll be here all night parsing words when I'm not sure we have to. But
Councilor Friedrichs, your hand is up.
Your hand.
Do you want to give an overview of your comments?
In my initial draft, I had proposed something kind of similar to what Councilor Needell is proposing, around having kind of a section of commitments. But I do think for the purpose of expediency, I wonder if that should be a separate conversation that is different from the goals, but one worth having, because when I was going through the town's website and trying to kind of identify, what our commitments are as a town, I felt like that was not clearly spelled out. We have our town charter, we have, these missions, we have our core values, but those don't describe kind of what we've committed to providing for our residents. And I think that could be a useful exercise, but I wonder, I would support the idea of developing that separately from the goals. In terms of the goals themselves, there was a rank voting platform that I had shared with Todd and some other counselors that I think might be a expedient system where we would have to do it live for right to know purposes, but each of us could kind of rank the order of importance that we think the goals have, and then the system, it's one that is, I think Councilor Register did a little research and learned that this is currently used by UNH, but it would tally all of our individual rankings and come up with a ranked list from our individual votes. And that might be a way to expeditiously come up with a priorities list, rather than trying to discuss each individual item and coming to consensus or voting on, you know, is this high, mid, or low priority?
Thank you. Just any comments on that? Councilor Register?
Yep, so I concur with the ranked choice voting. However, I think that should be a separate conversation. I think the task before us is figuring out what our goals are. And once we do the introductions across the board about who has put the thoughts into the goals and what those goals are, we need to decide if we want those goals before we start deciding the priority of those goals. And so I think if I could just go ahead and jump into what I think. Okay. So the several ones I added, I concur with Todd's assessment that the baseline goals met mission in regards to what the town needs to accomplish, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel unnecessarily. I do find, or I'm hoping, that the additions of these goals are metric focused and not just a paper drill for our residents and for our departments. With that being said, I do believe one way to curb answers on questions of progress reports on Madbury Road project or on other developments that we have access to would be to try to find a visual progress tracker that could have minimal details, but enough with hey, what's been accomplished the last quarter, what's been accomplished, or what's going to be targeted for next quarter, to help curb a lot of the frustrations that some residents have when they only see the potholes and they don't see all the other work that's going into Madbury Road. And I look at that as a relatively low effort, cost-free way to mitigate resident ire. As well as to align understanding on the council as well. So we're not all asking Rich Rain 9 separate times, what's the progress on Madbury Road? Additionally, oops. I don't know what I did. There we go. On goal 1, ECHO, which is continually evaluate cybersecurity risks and take steps to address potential vulnerabilities. When we toured the wastewater facility last year, I specifically asked the individual that was giving the tour what the cybersecurity capabilities were for wastewater, and he told me it was just a password protected file. And now granted, wastewater facilities aren't necessarily the #1 target of terrorists, but if we were to put all of that sewage into the Oyster River, it would cause significant damage to our agriculture, would cause significant damage to our tourism, in addition to the cost of cleanup. And so I would like to see some funding given or allocated to wastewater so that they could upgrade their level of cybersecurity protections to prevent any type of hacking incident or foreign adversary access, as they are targeting local municipalities. New Hampshire is probably not #1 on the target list by any means, but the point is not to be the easiest one to grab. Additionally, I think multi-factor authentication devices for the town. I know that Mr. Vincent is well in the CISA security updates from federal and is very much so on board. I think it's our job to make sure he has the resources he needs to get the recommendations for devices to protect ourselves and the residents. There are hacking attempts that have been going on all over the country that cause consternation, that lose security of personally identifiable information. And then once that information is out there, it's out there, and you don't know what it's going to be used for, whether it's for identity theft, whether it's for opening new bank accounts, whether it's for committing crimes in someone else's name. These are all risks that people just assume because the identity is taken from them and there's nothing they can do to claw it back. And I do believe as a government organization, we have an obligation to make sure that at a minimum our cybersecurity capabilities are not the weakest in the area. And though I don't believe they are currently, I want to make sure that we're continuing to stay with the current. In goal 1, Foxtrot, I add one saying ensuring counselors are utilizing municipal email addresses. Luke Vincent fought hard to establish an email address system so that we could have access to a town email. I think it's important that we show him that that effort was worthwhile and we use that email. I would also say that potentially expanding that email account access to the town chairs of boards may also facilitate an easier communication and record keeping. Goal 1, golf. I say create a quarterly report on vacancies of town positions and vacancies of committee positions to include alternates. And the purpose of that is to increase visibility of shortfalls to get and encourage more civic engagement. I think the Friday updates has already at least pulled one person in that was not going to volunteer otherwise, and I think that's an indicator of success. I would like to see a way to maybe keep a working spreadsheet that is not so much a data time suck, but is something that is quickly referenceable for when the inevitable questions come out. Hey, how many people we got missing from the Agricultural Commission? Hey, how many people we got missing from the Planning Board? Or how many people are getting ready to leave, because there is going to be those that expire on their terms and decide that they've had enough of the arguing.
Just a quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you see combining C and G? They're on the same topic, I believe.
Yeah, I could absolutely combine them. I kept them separate because one in my mind is specifically on the Friday updates and the, I think this is where we add the,
Or maybe at least put them back to back. Anyways, a thought.
absolutely,
Because
there
it's
is
the same
absolutely
topic.
efficiencies that can be gained there.
All right.
As I continue on, I'm moving on now to the goal number 2, conduct planning and take steps as necessary to protect public health. I added a piece in Bravo that was talking about updating the long-term feasibility planning with UNH on the future Durham Fire Station capital project. I want to add awareness to the McGregor EMS buildings as well. They are in a significantly degraded state. They can't even keep the ambulance running inside the bay because of carbon monoxide issues. There is no insulation inside of their offices and their buildings. AC and heating is not an asset. It's a very cramped and combined space. There is a lot of room for renovation and improvement that could increase the effectiveness and the responsiveness of our EMS brothers and sisters. And so I think this is one of those things where we need to get UNH involved. I know when President Chilton was here, she expressed an interest in updating the Durham Fire and updating McGregor EMS. Just one of those things I was hoping to put on the goals to keep it on our radar and to make us be a little bit annoying in regards to poking that bear. Don't have anything significant to add to most of goal 3. However, I go to the bottom, and this is where the mention of the Business Development Committee. I understand there was a Business Leaders Association in Durham in the past, and potentially bringing Durham together, or celebrating Durham capability. I see this as an adjacent endeavor to innovate and to reinvigorate business in the town. And we've done a lot of talking about business in the last couple of months in regards to bringing life back into downtown Durham, but not one business leader has come to speak to us at the council. I haven't been able to speak to any in a formal setting. I have talked to several informally in passing as I go to certain restaurants and stuff along those lines. But I think it would be nice to have a formal touch point where business leaders could, on a regular basis, express their concerns, recommend solutions, and acknowledge challenges to an administrator or a official representing the town to help make our responsiveness tighter. All right, number 4, pursue long-term environmental sustainability. I added an echo, which is to encourage local residential food production. I think as we move forward in this time of uncertainty, we're going to find that there's going to be a significant increase in food insecurity. And New Hampshire, particularly Durham, does not grow enough food for all of its residents. That is probably an impossible goal, but every percentage point that we take away that has to be transported in is an exponential decrease in carbon emissions, an exponential decrease in traffic, an exponential decrease in uncertainty, an exponential decrease in the number of residents that require food and the costs associated. And so if we can encourage folks to utilize the space available, because not everybody has a garden, not everybody has a yard, not everybody has a house, but people in Durham do have yards, people in Durham do have houses that could facilitate a co-op that would allow for those that don't have land or don't have expertise or don't have the time to be a part of something that still meets needs and puts food on the table, but doesn't require them to buy a separate 30-acre parcel to begin food construction or food production.
I have a comment on this point. Your 4 Echo has a strong overlap with 4 Delta. So that these two might be combined, or Delta might be reworded to something.
Certainly, in mine, I deleted Delta.
Okay. But Delta and Echo are largely along the same lines.
Yeah, that was my
Really
reword.
only need one of them.
Understood. To move on to Foxtrot, protect and preserve existing farming businesses and infrastructure through ordinances and relief. This is through conversation with the Agricultural Commission and talking about current use specifically being under threat, and making it harder for farmers to produce or use their land for production and keep pace with the current tax rates and property taxes. I don't know everything in regards to the tactics to help protect local farming industry and local farming businesses, but I think we should hold on to the food production growth that we have at a minimum, and we should not stymie it or starve it out. And 2 more points. I'll make sure I get it done before Mr. Ford's bedtime.
Too late.
On number 7, leverage town committees and subcommittees to develop tactical plans to align with broader goals. Update the zoning map with more definition and identifiable features, please, and move 66 Main Street to being under the town's authority and ownership. That has been mentioned multiple times. I feel like a goal is more likely to increase that to being done. And then the final one is one I completely made up. It's 8 lead efforts to promote inter-municipality awareness and collaboration of issues of mutual interest and concern. This whole goal comes through my uncertainty and even fear with how the federal government and the state government is handling business currently. And I think it is of utmost concern and priority that municipalities band together to protect the assets and the residents that they are in charge of, and use their collaborative power to help push back against some of the more dire ideas that are coming out of the capitals. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is obviously a very rough draft of a concept, but I think it is important that we have a standalone idea and understand that we have a responsibility to be at least a speed bump in between autocracy and our residents. And so in my mind, I think that we need to give the Human Rights Council a little bit more significant ability to impact things. Right now, I kind of only see them as a place to talk. And I don't know that they have much utility in assuaging resident concerns because there is no teeth to back up any of their recommendations or any of their observations. And in Bravo, this is going to be contentious, but I think it is important. I believe we should establish a blanket statement of noncompliance with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, as they have proven that they don't really care about due process. They don't care about getting it right. They care about pushing numbers into a jail cell and sending them to a different country. And that is a significant concern to me. This behavior is un-American. It is very alarming, and it should not be tolerated by any reasonable human being.
But it's not illegal.
I didn't say it was illegal.
Well, it seems to infer that, and you have to remember, we swore an oath to the Constitution of New Hampshire and the United States when we signed in here. It may push, so I think some of towns are doing it. But anyway, okay.
I also want to add that the transportation of Jews to concentration camps was very much so legal, and the hanging of black men in the South was very much so legal. I will not hide behind an oath if it requires me to do evil. 8 Charlie is established working relationships.
Neither would I, okay? I'm just trying to say that we have to stay within the laws, otherwise we're worse than they are.
I disagree, but I understand. 8, Charlie, establish working relationships with adjacent municipal elected and appointed officials to foster a timely and collaborative network. Essentially, establishing a habitual relationship that is an expectation of communication, not something that is a hodgepodge email network that every once in a while when something pops up, we say, hey, do you like this or do you not like this? This is more of a regular touch point with either the administrators or department heads or counselors to have clear communication between adjacent municipalities. 8, Delta, establish a reporting procedure to notify the town within 24 hours of any federal agents operating or attempting to operate within Durham. 8, Echo, reject state attempts to undermine local authority and control through vocal, visible, and collaborative opposition and passive noncompliance. And this is obviously underlying everything that I've already said, but in this particular case, it's to help delineate for anyone who's maybe unclear that attempts to undermine local authority or erode the ability of the municipality to provide services to their residents is of concern to the town of Durham and will not be allowed without conversation and visible opposition. That concludes my portion.
Thank you, Councilor Register. Councilor Vogt, do you have comments?
Yeah, so I'm the newbie to the council here, so let me just get that out there right away, all right? I come with looking at these goals, and I've received a lot of feedback from folks, and I appreciate that ahead of time on some of these goals. However, we have core values that are listed at the top here, and I come from legislative training, and my legislative training is that when you have core values, you try to hit those core values throughout your goals and throughout whether that's changes to goals or things that you would like to see. So I kind of went through this similar to Councilor Register and just kind of took a look, and I think everything that we have outlined here in terms of like Todd had said specifically in the basis of the goals is really good, and I think has really informed the town in terms of how we want to go forward. But going through here, just looking at the first goal, facilitate optimal function of town government through continuous improvements, efficiencies, and such. If you look at 1B, I added based on renewable energy opportunities explored and proposed. These are just simply additions to specific sub-goals that are already being explored through committees and whatever else, but I feel like the public needs to know that those are happening within our goals, that we are exploring these things. Not everybody tunes into commissions or listens in. However, they can go to these goals and know that we're working on them directly. So adding that in based on renewable energy opportunities explored and proposed is just essentially saying to be in addition that as renewable energy resources change and new technologies come into the fold, we are exploring them and seeing how we can implement them.
And I think you could include IMAC, you could include the Agricultural Commission. I mean, I think there are many groups that are doing
absolutely,
these things.
and I'm willing to absolutely add those commissions to set goals in terms of including them. But again, not a lot of folks are not tuning into those commissions or whatever else. So by adding those names, we could include folks becoming a part of that process. Looking at C, I think we kind of talked about that along Councilor Register in terms of expanding the accounts and taking a look at some of the ways in which we are letting folks know about volunteer opportunities and whatever else. So I added in C, utilizing town social media to bolster community outreach around the positions available. I think we do a decent job, but I think we could do a better job of letting folks know that there are opportunities on commissions and whatever else through social media. I've noticed recently the town of Durham social media has been very active in letting folks know what is going on in town. However, I see that there's an opportunity to build on that even more. I think there are more younger folks, more folks that I speak to that would like to see a more informative social media around what's going on with the council specifically and what's going on with commissions. So that's why that item has been added there. Going down to I, create, offer open community conversations between citizen and town councilors through open office hours in the council chambers, rotating on a monthly basis to increase participation and public input. Encourage participation in off-session community conversations to increase relationships with residents, businesses, owners, and public setting via town halls. Now, we know how town halls have been very popular recently for many different reasons. I think that also comes into play when it comes to local councils. and the ability for folks to reach counselors and to share their opinions and to get those, the shared concerns of citizens out there. Now, this came to me directly through conversations that I have had with folks, not only neighbors and whoever else, but just an experience in terms of local government and state level government, that when you, in terms of our core value of transparency, the best way to reach that is by reaching out to folks and giving them opportunities to be transparent about what the processes are and how we meet them. So my goal outlining there essentially is saying, by having, you know, whether it's a counselor every other month come in or whatever our schedules allow us to, is to have that open time for the public to come in, have a one-on-one conversation with the counselor. A couple folks come in, have a conversation with the counselor, just so that we can keep that running tab of what the general concerns are, so that if we feel like this should be at a commission, we can encourage folks to say, hey, this sounds like this is a great opportunity for you to become part of this commission, or this is an opportunity for you to become a part of this further conversation moving forward. So I think that there's definitely opportunity to grow along those lines through that goal. I had nothing to add for 2. Going down to number 3B, I am willing to move my goal and or remove my goal based on some of the recommendations above that were outlined in blue. However, I think it is important that we include language with some kind of dated goal based on some of the resolutions and ordinances we have recently passed about including family housing in the conversation when we're talking about expanding housing in Durham, talking about the recognition of the decreasing student population. That's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. And I think recognizing that in our goals is important moving forward, because it's going to ultimately be a major factor in all the housing decisions that we make. So just including that within B. Moving into D, again, I think Councilor Register and I are very much on the same lines when it comes to small business outreach. So I had put down solidifying working relationships with town businesses through collaboration on nationally recognized initiatives to drive the public to Durham's small business community, aka Small Business Saturdays, and participating in active discussions surrounding the improvement of communication between the town and said Durham business community. There are people in the business community that would like to say something, and I think that just building recognition through our goals that we realize that Durham businesses are a major part of who we are as Durham and will be a continuing part of the expansion of Durham. And just, I think the first part to establishing that communication is recognizing the small business within our goals and the decisions that we make moving forward. So that was around my D goal under 3. Going down to G. Again, I think respond to economic restrictions placed both federally and at the state level that impact the town, acting swiftly in response to the protection of operations and community services that are essential to the public. The town of Durham, with the approval of the council, may issue a statement resolution in contrast to said restrictions within a reasonable time in response. Great example of that is UNH in the state budget. Us passing that resolution to make sure that it was made very clear that we were against any kind of move by the state to remove those funds as it directly impacts Durham. Again, adding that into the goals here for us moving forward is key, because this is not the only time that we are going to have to utilize that. I foresee this becoming a regular thing, not just for this council, but as a public directive. A lot of folks are going to start asking, how does the town of Durham want to respond to that, or how are you going to respond to that? So including that in goals, I believe, is really important. Moving down to 4, the pursuing long-term environmental sustainability, resiliency, and the predicted impacts of climate change. I threw this one out there just based on conversations with a lot of folks. I know Councilor Nadell had brought it to my attention that CAT Tracks does exist. Of course, I've only been in Durham for a year and a half, so I am learning a lot of these new things.
And the town pays for half of it.
What's that?
The town also sponsors it.
Yes, correct, correct. So one of the things that I thought that might be a reasonable goal, or it can be something that a commission takes on separately, is the development of a bike share system, not just through CAT Tracks, but through a lot of conversations with folks saying, can I pick up a bike by the library and bring it to a bike rack at the end of my neighborhood and pick it up the next morning to go to work. That was a major conversation that I had, very similar to a city bike program that's been sponsored. I know the city of Salem, Massachusetts, Amesbury, Massachusetts, Manchester, Nashua, some of New Hampshire's biggest cities, and I think a lot of smaller cities are starting to explore some opportunities around the bike share system and finding sponsorship within that through small business or a business that's interested in becoming a part of Durham. So again, that's a goal that I think overarches the idea of offering alternative transportation, not just to residents, but folks who are going to be visiting Durham. I can foresee this as being a really great opportunity for folks that come in to take a look at the campus of UNH, to see that there are alternative modes of transportation being offered to residents and students in town. So I think that it kind of builds something more to that long-term environmental sustainability and transportation alternative. Looking at D, the exploration of the town garden. Again, something I did not know necessarily that was already in place. Through some further research, I did find out that the local community garden within my street is not necessarily what it originally was. It is very much controlled by a few residents and not open to the public. Therefore, to my understanding, I think based on what Councilor Register had said specifically, this focus on production and increasing food sustainability and building that basis here in Durham. I think that there's an opportunity to expand more community gardens in separate neighborhoods or something along those lines. Again, could be something as outlined here that the Agricultural Commission could take a specific look at moving forward. But just something overall that I wanted to kind of outline in that.
While you're there, there is a conflict in here between providing more housing and keeping land agricultural. And we are trying to do both things at the same time. And I don't have an answer to that.
Sure.
But we may end up with 1 acre zoning if the legislature has its way for housing. And how do we preserve farmland? And we don't own most of the land in town anyway. It belongs to the University of New Hampshire. I'm not asking you for an answer, but...
I wish I had one, but yeah, no, it's a tough conversation.
Well, we got to make a choice.
That's right. Absolutely.
Also, I think it'd be worth exploring what's going on at the Meadows, because the Meadows and the community garden Wagon Hill Farm, I understood, were run not by the same people, but in the same way. That these
Over off
are-
of Oyster River Road?
There's the Meadows, which is, yep,
Which is up here on
Yeah.
Newmarket Road.
Okay.
just down here, the Meadows.
Okay.
And there's
The
Wagon
limiting
Hill
feature
Farm.
is plot space.
Plot
The
space,
plot
correct.
space maybe, yes, there may not be enough, but
Correct.
They-
So it's something, that's why I
no,
outlined
people aren't
my
being
goals.
excluded because they don't want these people. That's just because they may not have enough plots.
That's right.
Right.
And the one on Wagon Hill is you apply to go in, and they're limited in their land too. I was one of the founding members of that was a long time ago. And,
Yeah.
but it is popular, but it takes a lot of time and management. We are fortunate to have some good leaders
Yeah.
out there.
No, and I think the overall purpose of that goal, as I was learning along the lines and folks sharing information with me, was more along the goal of finding additional opportunities to build upon that, more than trying to rip up whatever currently exists and then try to rebuild it from where it
The
is.
town
So
is not involved in that, other than to...
that's why I said the Agricultural Commission could take that on. This is just a basic goal outline around that.
Right. Well, it's, one thing this town could do is for a lot of our existing single-family homes, encourage homeowners and home renters to put in gardens in their yards,
Absolutely.
which is not inherently in conflict with the goal of creating more housing.
Correct.
We can do both.
Yes, we can. We can
Yes.
walk and chew gum at the same time on that. And then similar, I think Councilor Register outlined this looking at number 6, as I had nothing for number 5, working with law enforcement offices within the town of Durham in relationship with UNH to review changes to federal laws, ensuring that the safety of family, students, employees of Durham UNH are brought to the forefront of public safety when challenged by imposed laws set forth. that basically gets into the outline of what Councilor Register said in number 8. So I will not continue further on that. And then finally, looking at B, just adding highlight and reward the contributions of community leaders, local elected and appointed officials serving on local committees monthly via meetings or social media to give praise and increase the attractiveness of civic participation. That's again utilizing social media in some way to say, this commission has been working on this specifically. I think it deserves a little bit of uplifting. If there are positions that need to be filled on the committee, then it gives feelings out to the community saying, we'd love your input in this specific way. So it's just increasing that marketing of the committees and the commissions and the important work that they do. And then again on the small business, I think this can be kind of wrapped into small businesses specifically, but hosting a town award ceremony similar to surrounding municipalities, opening the public to honor community leaders, elected officials, and student groups, classes that have helped to elevate the Durham community in a multitude of ways. So just basically rewarding our local businesses, leaders, and whoever else to show that the town of Durham sees them, and that can be in communication and in collaboration with that small business task force and the commission to take a look at how do we increase small business and support them in town. So
I do think that most of the people that volunteer in town do it for intrinsic reasons.
Sure.
Not for extrinsic reasons. I was a middle school teacher. We actually ended up eliminating a lot of the extrinsic, I can't say that word. We were rewarding everything that a middle schooler did and realizing that the lesson we wanted to have people understand was to do things because it's the right thing to do or because it's something that volunteering is wonderful and satisfying. Rather than feeling like there's a reward at the end. So just my opinion only, but I think intrinsically doing things is my preference.
Sure. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I perhaps put you on the spot a bit to make some comments of how we might move forward on, now that we have an overview and people have presented their positions, do you suggest we go down these one at a time and discuss each one and each change? Does anybody have an idea how long we want to do this, both tonight and in future meetings? What our goal for, finishing this task is? But perhaps some comments from what you've heard.
Curtis had his hand up.
In my mind, this is going to be a multi-session conversation anyway, because there's some contentious stuff in here. And I think we've got it out there. I think if we wanted to have a preliminary round of discussion, as long as it was capped at like 15 minutes, because we do have other business items, correct?
Yes.
And then that would give us a couple weeks to think about what we're thinking about and have a more refined opinion coming into it, whether someone's completely against the topic or not against the topic. And then when we come back at the next iteration, I think we should do kind of like a unanimous consent type thing for the stuff that has not been amended, just to get it officially cemented as a foundation to work around. And then we go letter grade by letter grade saying, hey, do we want to keep it as is? Hey, do we want to amend it? Hey, do we want to delete it entirely? And then upon conclusion of that negotiation, once we have essentially the goals document, then we can move on into the prioritization conversation of what method we want to choose, and then further on into the actual prioritization of tasks, assuming that's amenable.
So I'm just wondering whether it makes sense to try to merge those items that are similar so that we have fewer choices, but choices that capture the overlaps. And the other question is, there are some great ideas here. In some cases, these are things that have been tried before, and there's a lot of background or information that would be helpful to understand before deciding how to proceed. So I guess the question is, when would we talk about that? And I think, though, a first step would be to narrow this down a little bit by eliminating redundancies and maybe to fine-tune the language a little bit, and then have that next conversation at a future meeting?
If I could just add a comment, if that's okay. I know I spoke a lot. Okay, I would just ask if we do the merging, that we aren't trying to eliminate, we are trying to focus on things that say the same thing or say similar enough things. Because the elimination conversation is going to cause a separate discussion that could get out of control. And if we're going to keep moving on the agenda items tonight, a 15-minute conversation ain't going to hold removal of products. And so if we're merging, I could see that working in 15 minutes. I don't know that I mean, I would probably be the problem if we were removing things, so.
I think your point is more that Todd's always very good at merging these pieces. That is your thought that we would take what's here, not we literally, but, you know, between now and the next meeting, have someone look at it and pull it together and then look at it, so we're not trying to do it.
I understood it as him saying we should try to merge it, but I'm cool with either of those options.
I was thinking it might be more successful for one of us to try to go through and merge it and eliminate duplications. And I'd be open to doing that. The question is, are you comfortable with me keeping the concept in spirit, but perhaps modifying the language so it's either more clear or captures more of the essence of what I think different people are saying when I try to merge? Or would you prefer I keep every word?
Negative. The spirit is what we're going for anyway.
And I would like to, if councilors would be willing to, between now and our next meeting, to go through and assign who does this fit with? Is this a Todd issue? Is this an ag issue? Is this an IMAC issue? Is this a DPW issue? So that we give some direction to the goals, like who owns this piece. And if it belongs to a committee, then making sure that whoever is the rep to that committee carries that information to them and says, this is a goal that the council has asked.
That's a good idea, in that when I was on the 3 committees this year, or 2, my suggestion was take the town's goal and now interpret it into how you would want to implement them. If with something like that in there, that would be helpful to the committees, because we will note where they might go to match their goals with the council goals.
And I think at the same time, we have to recognize that these are, all these groups are made up of people who are volunteers. And if that doesn't agree with the direction they want to go, then you have to decide, that's something to decide later.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
So if you're comfortable, I'll take this.
Just wanted to note that I
Mel.
had sent in some, I had sent in some suggested changes to the existing town goals, and for whatever reason, only one of them made it into the packet. So I will resend those to Todd to kind of identify those suggested changes as well.
Thank you.
All right, so it sounds like there is some consensus that Todd will, there were a couple of overlapping, and you're going to pull those together, and at our next meeting, we'll review these again.
And write an article about it for publication.
And I'll do my best to do it without losing what people are looking for. But if for some reason I do eliminate something, please don't be insulted, just highlight it and we'll set it back in.
I'm prepping my offense button right here, so I can be offended.
All right. Does anybody else want to say anything else tonight about the goals? Okay. All right, moving on. We're going to have a bit of an open discussion about the downtown zoning changes. And if you don't mind, I prepared a little bit of something by way of introduction of what we're talking about. We have an opportunity, there's been a lot of conversation about downtown and the revitalization of downtown. We have an opportunity to encourage that revitalization and make it possible. The town council's role in it is really to provide infrastructure which would include roads and utilities, and laws that enable responsible development. There is this opportunity to allow changes that would allow downtown to thrive. Development is a long cycle. It takes a long time. This is among the first steps for which developers will look at opportunities and see if they can make them happen. And if they can, they'll be bringing forward proposals to our town, and we probably won't see concrete results until at least 2026. But our role is to, I believe, create a framework where people can work and develop and help us improve our downtown, increase the housing that we want, do responsible development, and through all of it also meet our climate goals. And as we've mentioned before, strengthening our downtown and allowing more density does meet climate goals when you have shared heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. When I say shared, I mean if you allow the multi-story buildings, the heat on the first floor goes up to the second floor, goes up to the third floor. You don't need as much heat in those buildings per person. The same with air conditioning. We have a good public transit system already in town. It encourages even the opportunities to not have more than one car. So actual car, the number of cars in town may reduce, less car trips. And there are a number of positive attributes, as well as more choices for retail opportunities, and possibly even entertainment and the arts opportunities in downtown. In terms of economic factors, the town is looking perhaps for money because of the pressure from rising expenses and from fewer government grants likely coming forward. Towns have found that the higher percentage of commercial properties on their tax rolls really eases pressure on current property taxes for individuals and families. Commercial properties typically don't use all the services. They're a net payer into a system and pay more than they take generally. They take some fire protection, some police protection. They typically do not go into schools. They're not a burden on our water systems, generally not a burden on our wastewater systems either, in proportion to what they provide in terms of tax revenue. For retail downtown, retail really wants to see customers that can walk or bike, ride within 5 or 10 minutes of the downtown. They would like to see year-round residents, so you have 100% of the year, not 75% or less when the school is out, but have more permanent residents, and need convenient parking. And that doesn't mean necessarily on-site, but close by. Parking, we know, is a complex issue. It involves traffic as well as the physical places and the cost of creating the parking. There are garages currently under consideration in Durham by University of New Hampshire. I think with changes to some of the density downtown, there would be demand for also a garage somewhere near downtown. If you look at the amount of paved area in Durham, which just has cars on it and nothing else, you'd kind of be astonished. And there's more demand for parking than you even see. So putting cars into a garage would also free up some development sites in and around downtown. And we have our own 66 Main Street that could use some parking nearby. Just as a highlight for demand, current demand in Durham, there seems to be rising demand for a hotel from the market, for workforce housing, for seniors housing, the attainable housing, and housing for families. And so we have an opportunity here with some of the zoning changes being brought forth to attract people that would want to build those types of facilities. We're going to consider 79E later, which is after this in our agenda, which is, I think, what is called enabling legislation. We put forward something that can happen, and then each project, as the 79E is written, gets evaluated on its own right. So we're not just approving, oh, somebody can come in here and do whatever they want under the 79E, and they're going to get tax relief. They'll need to show that it's worthwhile to Durham, and then the town council would approve each project under a 79E program. There's a town council initiative that was sent to the planning board about changing the CBD. An initial map was sent out that shows a so-called CBD1 and CBD2. The CBD1, the traditional downtown, CBD2 in the blue in your maps is the proposed new zone, which includes Mill Plaza and a portion of University of New Hampshire, for which we can't do really any building on. So really no new lots were added to the CBD. It was just a changed classification. And in my own personal look at this change, it seemed to me to make, it would be okay to make more of a change. And so the maps that you have in front of you and that were distributed show along Mill Road in a blue-green, all those properties on the west side of Mill Road that are shown abut parking lots, institutional buildings. When I say that, I mean multi-story, University of New Hampshire, non-residential buildings. Some of them are residential, excuse me. Towards the left side of the diagram, going out on Mill Road, you may know Christensen and Williamson Hall are close to 10 stories each. So those aren't like your single-family home in the backyard. Those are basketball courts, big parking lots, large buildings. And my suggestion is that those lots actually all be included in the CBD2, including actually the last two going to the river. I asked planner Michael Barrett if he could create this map with our GIS group. And those last two that are in gray could probably also be included, that are right next to that Christensen basketball court and the 10-story buildings behind them. The river then becomes the barrier where the old mill is, if anybody's seen that river, and the beautiful historic mill. No changes would be required there. The river and that historic mill is a transition to the neighborhoods further out and to the conservation land. My suggestion also on this CBD 2 of including those apartments right next to the Mill Plaza as well as the Ways Meat Center. Again, they're already backed up to commercial properties and function as commercial properties now. Those properties on the west side of Mill Road would not necessarily have to change, but could change and could provide further investment in Durham, where we would get revenue not only from new construction, but renovated construction as well. So I kind of opened the discussion about that with those comments, and we have an opportunity, by the way, and to do this rather than going back and forth with the planning board, if we were to add these properties before the planning board's public hearing, we might not have to go back and forth with public hearings at the council and make a significant change and back to the planning board and redo public hearings, but have a smoother process that would actually get these changes in place in 2025.
That's a tight schedule because I believe the planning board is having a public hearing on this amendment on Wednesday.
Yes. Yes. Councilor
I
Nadal.
don't believe the map was included in the town council packet. Is there a link where I can view these because I can't see them?
It is online, actually, on the planning board's website, this map. I don't know if you can see that
It's
from the Zoom meeting. I believe it's posted on we're seeing it on the Zoom screen.
So
Councilor
I'm
Neal?
curious, what's the impact on the people who own the homes that are in the green properties? Obviously, they knew when they bought these houses what was in their backyard. What they might not have planned on was something happening in the lot next door that didn't look like a residential home like theirs did. Are there protections?
A fair number of them are not single-family residences.
Right, but as you get
Right,
clo-
but some of them are.
some of
I
them-
know,
Yeah.
but I said, many of them are not.
Right, yes, and I think in that initial section, but once you get out, further out of town, down Mill Road, there are a lot of private homes. So my question is, how are they impacted? Are they protected in any way? Are they able to claim that their property values have gone down for them? Because they're not going to be able to sell, they may be able to sell to a developer, but maybe they're not going to be able to sell that home as a home, that kind of thing. What are those impacts to people that are already there? I'm curious about.
In my opinion, it would seem they have the flexibility for either one. So they could be professional office-type spaces. They could remain as single-family homes. Some of them are quite large, so that they could actually, I think, be used as more than a single-family home. It would seem that there would be added value as opposed to subtracted value for those properties. They have a real negative as a single-family home by having all those parking lots and institutional buildings behind them. That they are a buffer to the rest of the residential
Right.
neighborhood.
I just think they knew that when they bought their house. They didn't know when they bought their house that the property next door might become commercial property.
Yeah, and I do, it's a little more nuanced than that from recollection. I can identify Hoyt Drive here, and the topography there is extremely hilly. And so even though there are these very tall buildings, there's also a large hill and quite significant tree cover, many high white pines, so that, for example, from Mill Road, where Hoyt Drive, which is not labeled here, but it's that L-shaped thing at the very bottom of this map, where that joins Mill Road, you cannot actually see any of those buildings or the parking lot from Mill Road currently, because of all of the topography changes and the dense vegetation between those single-family homes and the university uses. That's quite different from the parking lot, which you can see in kind of in the middle of our map. That flattens out quite a bit. So actually from where we are, which our street is the little street at the very bottom right of this map, we can see the parking lot lights, for example, from our home, but we cannot see the 10-story building at the corner of McDaniel Drive and Williamson Way, or the parking lot to the left of that, because the topography changes so significantly.
Okay? Does anybody else have any comments?
At one point, that was where the fire station was going to go, wasn't it, Todd?
Yes, and in the new UNH master plan, it will once
gonna
again
go
become
big.
the future location. So that's the plan.
Right.
Lot B.
Lot B.
Yeah, the current plan for the new fire station is to be on what is now Lot B, which is the parking lot that extends all the way from Academic Way to McDaniel Drive.
So to me, it's a fairness even for those lots, that, they have very different uses behind them, and that it gives them flexibility to adapt to those uses. And I hear what you're saying about next door, but right behind them, can you imagine even having a fire station right behind your house like that?
Well, I have a question. The 56 Main Street, the vacant lot next to the bank, that belongs to the town right now, right?
66.
66 Main Street,
yeah.
All of the proposals for West Edge now include use of that property, I think.
Well, As part of the RFP, one option was for developers to offer a vision for that site as well. And so it depends upon the developer, what their thoughts are, and we've not selected a developer yet.
My question is, when the developer makes a proposal, does that lot become part of the university, which means that they would not have to comport with the town's zoning?
No, the town of Durham owns that lot, so we would have to decide if we want to keep the land and maybe do a long-term lease to a developer or sell the land to a developer. The university is not interested in buying that parcel, so it would be a developer interested in buying it potentially.
But
Or using it.
if we sold it to the developer,
Yeah.
because we were going to sell it anyway, we just decided to keep it for a while.
If we sold it to the
it would-
developer, it'd be
The question is,
subject.
if the developer bought it, just out of curiosity, it would no longer, that would belong to the public, to the university, and we wouldn't have any control over the zoning.
Not the
No.
university.
It would own, if we sold it to the private developer, the private developer would own it privately and it would be subject to local zoning.
All right. And for that matter, the wet.
Set up the legal structure yet for this.
Right. The planning board is currently working on getting a PUD ordinance in place to deal with eventualities like
But that
this.
doesn't deal with-
And the PUD, yeah.
66 Main Street in there?
No, it's 66 Main Street is owned by the town of Durham. UNH
Right,
has no
right.
control over that
I
site.
know that.
Right. But that was put in the RFP as an option to suggest something to do with that site.
It's a potential further site. So we wanted to make developers aware that there is this site in town, because part of what the Edge is possibly looking for is a hotel. And so if there's a hotel coming to town, do we want a hotel at the Edge, or do we want it in the middle of the town on 66 Main Street, for instance? And there's
That would take a zoning change, to build a hotel there.
in town.
No.
No, you can build a hotel at 66 Main Street.
Right.
That's
Right. You just
Yeah,
have to comply with the height limits.
At the meeting tonight, at the president's house, she was asked, she's very forceful about the strategic plan that they're doing. And it's going to be a very active plan, and she's going to do it. She did say, I asked about how's the town going to fit into this, and I think we will be asked, because it could affect our plan, obviously. Do you know about coordinating with the university's plan? Are we okay, I think, just to let them go ahead and then weigh in June, or have you had any discussions about how that, the university strategic, because they've got, have you seen I went to the presentation of their physical plan, and they've got all kinds of things, overhead railways.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different initiatives moving forward in parallel. One is the Edge at West End, that's one initiative. A second is updating the UNH campus master plan, which you're referring to now, and
Right.
we've had close alignment with both of those. The strategic plan is a bit more academically focused, so that's really involved
we're gonna do,
UNH
yeah.
more, but to the extent it impacts the town, we would have conversations with them.
Well, the location of the fire station is going to,
Right, but that's something that's been discussed at length as part of the campus master plan conversation.
because I think they had it over by Mill Road on the,
Yeah, we had, as part of the last master plan 10, 11 years ago, it was located on Waterworks Road. That was the
Right,
pad.
which is on the other side of the railroad
Right.
tracks.
still over there? Okay.
Right now, that's the reserve pad, but it will shift, I believe, to B-Lot. And B-Lot, from our point of view, is much better. That's been the ideal fire station future location since the 80s. So from the
Because so many
town's point of view.
calls go down Mill Road to the, every time.
Yeah, the traffic works better, the proximity's better, you don't get caught up with the railroad tracks, it's just, you don't get caught up with students changing classes. It's a
Yep.
great location, and for people who live near there, people love living near fire stations. It's so safe. It's great. And we don't roll with sirens and lights all the time like they used to in the 70s. You know, they're much more quiet.
They can roll the sirens when they need it.
Yeah. My grandmother lived in the same block as the fire station in Laconia, and she loved it. She felt it so safe.
And you know, there's potential in the future too, where you could possibly create a TIF district here with these additional lots that could pay for an extension of the sidewalk as well on that side, and other improvements to the downtown. So again, it would be another place to add perhaps more housing. It's not, the demand for office is pretty non-existent right now, so it's really unlikely you'll see that. These are not manufacturing sites, they're too small. So it's likely that it's going to be housing of sorts, some way or another. Possibly transitional housing. The transitions from the large institutional to the residential on the other side. And in those additional lots, we're not proposing on pushing into the faculty neighborhood at all. We're staying on the west side, except for those first two properties that are already in use, consistent with a CBD2. And they'd actually make them probably non-conforming to conforming in their use.
I'll be honest, the first time I saw the map with the CB1 and CB2, I wondered why those parcels weren't included. In fact, I think I mentioned it at the time. And the ones along Mill Road next to the university. However, I would suggest that maybe McDaniel Drive be the end point rather than go past that. But I guess that's kind of, depends on how you want to do it. But I agree. I think those should all be included in CB2. Maybe not. Well, I guess you'd have to leave the UNH parcel on the corner there with all the residence halls and things. But I mean, that's never going to be developed, is it?
Right. It doesn't give the town of Durham any opportunity on that site.
Right.
Councilor Register?
Right. I was going to say that I think the number one highest risk to the longevity of Durham being able to provide commiserate services to its residents is our lack of revenue. And we need to seriously increase the likelihood of business investment in Durham. Otherwise, it's property taxes that are going to have to foot the bill, and that's on the residents. And so I think this expansion makes sense. I think it's relatively close enough and walkable to the central downtown, so it can still identify as an urbanization, a co-location to downtown. It will definitely increase the risk of residents being concerned about urbanization, lifestyle conflicts, and just general traffic flow through the area. But again, it's the difference between exorbitant residential property taxes and potential commercial investment where they're offsetting those property taxes, as well as interesting assets and venues that would attract tourists that are coming with their families from UNH, or to have date nights in Durham. And so I think this is a significant boost to our chances of getting developers and entrepreneurs to look at Durham as a viable place to make a quick buck, or maybe not a quick buck, but a deliberate buck that is useful to the community, will pay the bills, and increase the capability of us to be able to provide all of the wonderful services that Durham provides. This area is unique. I have not lived anywhere like Durham, and there are plenty of places that just leave people off to the wayside with services. And so if we want to continue to have the same expectation of library capabilities, of school capabilities, of recreation abilities, of the Durham Police and the Durham Fire, we need to have money to pay the people doing these jobs. And that money has got to come from business development because I don't believe working class citizens can afford much more in tax rates.
I would say too, these sites have the utilities already to the site. They have water, they have sewer, they have broadband, they have sidewalks, they have recreational amenities. So there's all this built in. They just, would somebody like to live there? And there's demand for people to live here.
There is not currently a sidewalk on the west side of Mill Road, south of Faculty Road.
Right.
South of Faculty, on the west side. So that's
On the west side.
So that's what I'm
Right,
saying.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, there's a sidewalk on the west side of Mill Road up to the, up to the, up to the house that's across from the Faculty Road intersection, but not beyond that point.
And so that's why I'm saying you could create a TIF district possibly where revenue from these properties could help pay for a sidewalk going forward on that side.
Or maybe even, I don't know, the town of Durham could swing a sidewalk, you know, for another few hundred feet.
Well,
You know, it's possible.
right. We do know sidewalks are expensive, though. I mean, the sidewalk that went in front of the tennis courts at UNH from the field house to the circle cost $500,000. So it was like, sidewalks can be expensive, surprisingly expensive. Maybe that's
So
not too much.
we'd be
but-
looking at the order of $1 million per mile.
Wasn't $500,000. No, it's not that expensive.
Not $1 million a mile, that's a road cost.
Well,
actually.
no,
Not
road's
anymore.
more than that, but.
More than that, no.
Yeah.
Right, but $500,000, it's
That's an
what,
average.
half a mile from?
That's an average house in Durham.
Yeah, but it's what, half a mile from the railroad tracks to the circle?
They may have had different slope issues too that they had to deal with.
They did.
True.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm sorry, Counselor, I mean,
Just got demoted.
There is a sidewalk on the other side of Mill Road, so
Yes.
if someone wants to walk
Right.
into town, there's a sidewalk across the
Yes.
street, or they can go through their backyard and head up through campus, so.
Yes.
But I think from a zoning perspective, really the way things have evolved, you know, these lots have become more or less part of the buffer between University proper and the residential development on this side of Mill Road. And I think that's how a lot of the residents who live on Mill Road will look at this. But in reality, many of these properties have already transitioned to university-centered commercial use. A lot of them are student housing, or they're, apartment building, something like that.
And there would still continue to be
They would.
a buffer, I mean, a transition area.
Right.
That's
I mean,
correct.
nobody's going to build a, coking plant there or
Right.
anything.
And for the handful of single-family homes that are still being used as single-family homes, they could continue to use them as such.
That's right.
They're already surrounded by non-single-family uses, so it really is a minimal impact to them.
Right. There'd be a question, though, of would this fly with the residents on the east side of Mill Road in this section? They may be willing to live across the street from something that looks like a single-family house, even if it's sort of transition to a more intensive use. They might not be comfortable living across the street from something that's part of the CBD.
Right.
And this is the reason why I am reluctant to extend that, at least at the present time, beyond Faculty Road.
Right, and what you could see, and I think probably would over time, is the intensification of those uses. So right now, these are, 3 stories, 2-3 stories at most. These could become multi-story, large structures, potentially, if lots became merged and someone wanted to invest in them. So we'd have to be aware of that over time.
There's that balance of creating revenue for the town and not
That's right.
making any changes ever.
Stay.
So I don't, if there's any other comments that we make, I think personally, and I would not say I'm representing the town in any way, except it was my personal, I think I probably will go to the planning board hearing on Wednesday night and perhaps advocate for this same thing.
Do you need a vote from the council?
Unless we wanted to make one, I don't know if anybody's prepared to make a motion or an amendment or anything.
Well, he would not need approval from the town council to speak his own opinion at the planning board hearing.
Yeah, I'd prefer to represent the council, but I'm going to do it whether I represent the council or
The
don't.
distinction is,
What's that?
you're the chair of the council. No, I'm not, no, I'm not. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I know I operate independently. I mean,
I wouldn't have any issue with you speaking at the planning board meeting.
Me neither. I'd be happy you represented me.
Yeah, I'd recommend you go and, tell them the idea and the rationale behind it, and if the planning board likes it, they could amend it. If they feel more discussion is necessary, they can just move this forward the way it is, and we could, they could bring it up at a later date, or we could initiate something new on short order, so it begins to socialize the idea.
I agree. That makes sense for you to bring this idea up to the planning board at this time. I do not have a sense of whether the planning board would go along with it.
But wouldn't it help him if he had the imprimatur of the council behind it?
absolutely would. Absolutely would.
Well, if we haven't heard anyone object.
I think there's the main question is how far up Mill Road would this extend?
Well, I'm willing to make a motion. I move that the council, I don't know exactly how the word is, convey to the planning board its...
Proposed plan.
Well, why don't you make the motion? And I'll second.
You want stick by stick. The proposed plan for rezoning downtown Durham for their consideration and action.
But I would make it only up to McDaniel Drive. That would be my motion.
And, well, when you present it to the planning board, you make note of that.
Is there a
Since
second?
we're all in
Is there a second to
agreement,
that?
are you okay with this?
Is there a second to that motion? I'll second that motion. And further discussion? Did you have a question?
No, I think it just, you're going there representing us, and if it's unanimous approval, but we're just conveying it to them. Because we want to honor their hegemony over this process. But the council has had this idea, and we all agree to it, and you can present it. And then they can do what they want.
Just discussion here. It seems arbitrary that we're cutting it to McDaniel's, though I do understand.
It's arbitrary wherever we cut it.
That's why I was going to ask if these 5 plots were arbitrarily colored, or if someone put some thought into why those 5 plots got extended onto this map.
The 5, did you?
After McDaniel's.
Yes, actually, if you go out there, and I'm suggesting the last 2 also be changed, because if you go out there and you see all those parking lots and buildings, they're behind all of those buildings. And so it's a transition, and it's a I believe, in my opinion, it's a disadvantage having parking lots and institutional buildings behind single-family residences. So all of these would gain a benefit of having the flexibility to change if they want to, or stay as they were.
I am supportive of the amendment, or the motion as it's said. I would also be supportive of maintaining the 5 blocks if that were a motion that got made as well.
Is there any other discussion?
If the seconder is
I think
willing.
it's a very interesting proposal.
Excuse me, Emily, Counselor Ford, and we'll get to you second. Thank you.
If the seconder is interested in retracting his second, then I'll retract the motion and I'll make it to include all of the colored green, light green parcels shown on this map.
Seafoam green.
I would withdraw that to allow the revised motion.
As the proposer of the motion, I accept that.
You can see our brain cells are dying.
All right. Counselor Friedrichs. Counselor Friedrich?
I was just going to say that I think it's a very interesting proposal, and I would love to see the planning board discuss it further. I do wonder if, in order to accommodate any potential changes, that it would have to be resubmitted for public hearing, because I think it is a pretty significant, if the planning board were to move forward with the language change. That would be my only comment, is that I just would want to make sure that the public had adequate notice.
Absolutely.
Yep. You've made your revised motion, I believe. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Just want to clarify that we are now voting on whether we agree with the entirety of this pictograph before us. Is that how I'm understanding?
That's right.
Yes.
So we shall vote. Counselor vote.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, nay.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, nay.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Counselor Friedrichs?
I just want to clarify exactly what the language is that we're voting on. Is this an endorsement of changing the zoning, and is it an endorsement of the planning board exploring the option and discussing it?
This, as I understand, is endorsement of changing the zoning for the lots shown on the map, this revised map,
To CB2.
to CBD2. This council
Okay,
has
then my
already
vote would
endorsed the...
be-
Excuse me?
Then my vote would be nay. I'm not comfortable with endorsing specific ordinance changes yet, but I would be in favor of exploring the idea further.
We're in voting mode.
Yeah.
So that's why I voted nay, but I wanted to kind of clarify.
With an explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, and I will report back, or you may see it online, but I will...
It was 4 to
either-
3, right?
I think five to three.
5 to 3.
All right, and our last order of business is the 79E resolution.
There's also a.
Oh, excuse me, that's right.
And in view of the hour, I'm going to make a motion that we extend the meeting to 10:45.
I'll second.
Counselor vote.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Darrell Ford, nay.
Curtis Register, aye.
Counselor Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, nay.
We'll try to get out of here before that. The motion to approve the minutes or any...
Okay, I submitted one minor change and an email that Robin Mower sent out this afternoon. She noted another change, which was that on
Mill Pond Road.
yeah. This would be on page 7, lines
Yes.
line 19. That should be Mill Pond Road instead of Mill Road.
Okay. I also have a change on page 4, line 36 and 7, where the preliminary plans for the rink are going to be presented at the next Parks and Rec meeting, not at this town council meeting. Are there any other changes that anybody wanted to make?
I made just one small one.
Okay. I move that we approve the minutes of the April 7th, 2025 meeting as amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Councilor Nadal. Councilor Register. Any further discussion? Councilor Register.
Curtis Register, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Cy Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin Boat, aye.
Councilor Friedrich.
I'm Friedrichs, aye.
Thank you. And finally, we get to the 79E resolution. I think people have read it in the packet. Town Planner Michael Barrett with Housing Task Force member Sally Tobias, who'd like to say some words about this.
Do you want to give a quick intro?
I believe I was on the team that looked at the 79E a few years ago that we couldn't find resolution on. It's getting late, but and I think there were some aspects of it that were just not realistic from the viewpoint of encouraging a developer to, invest in the town. 79E is an incentive, and even as it's written in the state RSAs, it's got a lot of flexibility, and it gives still the power of the town council or the governing body to decide whether it's going to be applied for. It's not just a freebie. Not everybody gets it. There's still control over it. But it's a really useful tool to encourage people to invest. Why invest in my town when I could go someplace else? I think it's important. I think you all know the state of the downtown, but it's important to understand that Durham has almost declined at a time when all the other communities around us have risen up. There's been a tremendous amount of building, redevelopment, revitalization, and towns across New Hampshire. I have visited had the opportunity through Main Street Academies to visit many towns across the state, and every single one of them use 79E and have created vibrant downtowns. We couldn't get that passed here in Durham, which it was kind of strange considering the Main Street Academies came out of UNH, out of the Cooperative Extension. But you have a situation and you need to encourage people to come here. And you also have a situation where you have a negative reputation. Why would you come here? When people come here, they get eaten up by planning boards or by, individuals in town. We haven't been necessarily inviting. We've almost put up a sign that says, "Don't come," because we don't really want you. And this is what the result is. It's a serious situation. Many people in this town have a vision of what they believe Durham can be. It's a cute little town. It's not living up even close to its potential. It's floundering. And you're going to have, rules in place that say, we are going to do this. We are making a change. You're going to have to promote the fact that we are making a change. We are going to have this incentive, just like other communities have had it. We're not going to micromanage it. We could add some little things to it, but we're not going to overly micromanage it and put higher demands or benchmarks. We're going to have a very open 79E incentive program. At the same time, we want to try to cut away at that bad image that Durham has developed by letting the surrounding, New Hampshire at large, investors know that we are making drastic changes to our zoning. And you therefore now can build what is appropriate, and maybe you can build it and at a profit, which you need to do, or you're not going to build it. We have to make the changes, and we have to create the incentive, or you're not going to get it. And Durham is a place to come. Encourage entrepreneurs and businesses that are out there. This is why you should come here. Come and create. We are a college town, but we are a multi-generational town, and we can sustain multi-generational businesses. And you have a couple of very good examples of that. One in particular, who's probably the best example, I feel, who's actually came out of when you did a lot of the building, with the Madbury Commons building came up, and was actually an integral business that actually got started, helped us get Celebrate Durham started when we started it way back. And that was Hop and Grind. Hop and Grind came into, and you all know there, if you haven't gone there, I don't know why you haven't gone there.
Big popper.
You know, Bobby Marquardt he came to our Celebrate Durham meetings. He helped us with the imagery, the picture that we have that was created by them. They came into that brand new building. They had to put extensive work into it because it wasn't fitted out for a restaurant. But they did it. They had the money they put in. They were multi-generational, and that was what they stated. We are a multi-generational place. We are a multi-generational business. And they have been successful. You know, so it's hard to start a business, and it's hard to stay in business. And you're at risk. If you have to fix up buildings, if you have to build new buildings, 79E can be that incentive.
So I wonder, it's a little complicated, and I hope you had a chance to look over the packet. There's a lot to it. I can explain more some of the specifics if you'd like, or respond to questions.
Let me see if are there any questions?
I've read the packet. I'm comfortable with it.
Most of us have read the packet and understand what's in front of us.
There's a very interesting aspect to this, which is what I referred to in the write-up, and that is, think of it as though three kinds of potential projects in the downtown. A project that is just a slam dunk. And, you know, the developer, no question, they're going forward if they have the zoning and the money, they're going to do it. And that was a lot of the student housing projects from 10 years ago. Downtown, they did not need any help. And there was a huge pent-up demand, and I'm sure they have been doing well, although things are a little flatter now. We would not have wanted the town to subsidize those projects. They were doing very well, thank you very much. Not to mention that there were a lot of people in town that weren't thrilled about having more student housing downtown. And it might have especially bristled at the notion of freezing their taxes for 5 years for more student housing. So a student housing project, in my view, would not have been appropriate 10 years ago for 79E. And then there's going to be other projects on the opposite end that maybe sound like wonderful projects, but they're very marginal. You know, the developer has this great idea, but it's probably not going to work. And even with 79E, it probably would still not be viable. But there's a lot of projects that, not a lot, but there are projects in the middle that are not slam dunks, but the idea of a particular project is very appealing, like housing for non-students. Could be seniors, could be even families, singles, millennials, and perhaps there might even be some other goodies involved, some public space, some outstanding design, interesting commercial tenants. And a project like this would come forward and we'd say, wow, that's terrific. Will the market support it? You really going to do this? So some of the objection to this, and I'll just speak very quickly because I know you want to get out of here in 10 minutes. Some of the objection when we looked at this 4 years ago was that the theory that your project is either viable or it's not. And if it's almost viable, then okay, we'll let you, the town will participate. But if it's viable, we don't want to participate. You're on your own. The reality, however, is that's not the reality. there is this middle tier of projects with a lot of nuance and a lot of uncertainty. Developers are often not sure if they want to proceed. They don't know if they're going to get the financing. They're not real confident with the market. There's always a lot of nervousness for a developer unless you're doing a slam dunk project. And so those are the middle tier projects that in a tough market with a good project, for the town to say, we're going to work with you. We are willing to forego an increase in taxes for, say, 5 years, which is typical, to give you confidence. We're a partner with you on this. We want to see this project go. And a developer is going to say, wow, that is great. You are putting your money where your mouth is. You say you want to improve the downtown. You're really willing to do it. You're giving me the confidence that we are partners in this. Plus, in those first 5 years, they're the most difficult. And so my taxes are going to be kept under control. So I'm going to do this project. And that's the idea of 79E. So unfortunately, it was adopted in 2009 by the town. In 2011, you added a provision, which I think was kind of a poison pill, which said if the project is viable without 79E, we won't do it. And we haven't had any applications since then, except for one, the ZMIT project.
And there was the requirement for them to show their...
And they had to show their finances, and nobody wanted to do
Michael,
that.
I have a question on that. You say their taxes won't go up.
Well, the assessment will be frozen at the pre-development.
Right.
The assessment could still move a little bit based on the market, but the assessment is not going to be affected by their improvements.
So if they put $200,000 into the project, their assessment will be the same. Won't change. Now, what if it goes down because the market goes down?
May go down, sure.
That's...
But after 5 years or whatever.
Will they stay at the level they were before, though?
Yeah. Now, my understanding of this, and there may be different. I know some communities have interpreted the law differently, but my understanding is, so you have an existing building that's worth $2 million. You get 79E, and then you plan on putting $3 million into it. Your assessment is frozen at $2 million for the 5 years. Now, the market your assessment on that existing building before development might go up 10%, and certainly the tax rate's going to change, so your taxes are going to fluctuate, but your taxes will not be affected at all by your $3 million investment.
Until such time.
Until
Eventually
after,
they will.
Yeah, and it's usually it could be 3 years. There's even additional provisions. It could be 7, theoretically 9, but the 3 projects we did were all 5 years. And you'll see, but generally 5 years is a good amount of time. Long enough it's worth everyone's while, not too long that it feels like, wow, their taxes have not gone up.
Hold, Mike.
Yeah.
The governing body has to find a public benefit in the project. Is reducing your taxes or increasing the revenue to the town a public benefit?
Oh, you mean after the
public benefit.
I'm reading from section 79E:4.
The public benefit would be an improved space and
Let me finish, okay? The governing body finds a public benefit. And that's, okay, and so the public benefit is increasing ultimately revenue to the town.
Right.
Because it doesn't increase for 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, eventually you would get more money, and you also get a better looking space, which may attract actually more businesses to come in.
In addition to the quality of the industry that's showing up, whether it's a new restaurant or a new park or whatever.
Yeah, you could have a building that's put up that you're getting, they're getting 79E on that building, but there's rental space in there that doesn't get 79E, but is renting that improved space, which creates a vibrancy and a reason for people to come in.
So the resolution before you is very similar to it's really, the only basic change is it removes that, what I call a poison pill. And it gives, it enhances some of the public benefit definition that you added in 2009, and it adds a little bit more guidelines. But,
we were able to do some stuff. We had an economic development person. And if we're going to go whole hog into downtown redevelopment, shouldn't we have a staff person to work with incoming business? So de facto, Todd does it. Now, we just put 17 pages of goals for him together. And I don't think you can, the woman that we had hired was really good, because you could refer them to her. She was part-time, and I know it was a special deal, but do we have the horsepower to administer this program?
Oh, sure.
Do now.
Yeah.
Okay, don't come to us.
It would come through the planning
with red
department.
eyes saying you're up all night.
Oh, no.
No.
It would come through the planning department. The other ones.
The other question I had is, where's the state of New Hampshire? They have a division of economic development. Do we work with them? Do they bring clients into town, or?
We wish they would more. But we do certainly do economic development. Most of it is the town administrator and me, as resources allow. But there's other people, Councilor Friedman, who has a background in real estate, and others who would help out as opportunities arise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Nadel?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to move the town council does hereby adopt Resolution 2025-09, rescinding Resolution 2011-11, and implementing new local objectives and guidelines for reviewing applications under New Hampshire Revised Statutes, annotated RSA 79-E, Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive, enabling municipalities provide for short-term property assessment tax relief.
I would enthusiastically second that.
Second that. Is there any discussion beyond that? I would actually suggest an amendment to make minor changes on page 1 where it says additional local objectives, crossing out the word including and replacing it with such as projects, those 3 words. And on page 2, number 9, changing the word inclusion to including.
As a seconder, I agree with those amendments.
Are there any other comments on 79E or
You okay?
that?
You made them.
Yes, well, for discussion, I'm a little concerned about moving forward with an ordinance that could affect people's taxes without having held a public hearing. So that is just kind of jumped out at me a little bit now. And I also want to point out that in the packet, the 2 different wordings that are submitted, they're not, they're inconsistent. So the first draft that was submitted, the one that says draft on the top in asterisks, that I think is meant to be a cleaned up version of the last document in the draft. So the paragraph under documentation, it differs. The writing is not the same between the final documentation in the 4th part of the packet and the section that says documentation in the first part of the draft and the
you're referring to,
142, and I think we need to continue this to the next meeting.
Councilor Friedrichs, I'm sorry, excuse me. You're referring to the opening paragraph rescinding resolution. I think that probably Karen just made that read better as she was preparing this.
No, there's a sentence at the end of the paragraph that says documentation, which is included in one version of this, and it is not included in the other version.
No, Karen didn't. No, it's the same language there.
Will we extend the meeting?
I'm comfortable filling the vote.
Excuse me?
I'm comfortable calling the vote.
All right, please call the vote.
Well, which version are we voting on?
I'm sorry, can you clarify?
The language is not the same language.
Can you, Councilor Friedrichs, when I did the marked up version in the blue and red, and then I did the final version, and I made a few just non-substantive improvements in language, but I don't think anything significant. Was there anything particular that you can point to?
One's a draft.
Yes, the last sentence under where it says documentation. In one version it says, as part of any application, however, the applicant shall provide information about the projected costs of each component. And the other version does not include that.
Oh, all right, so you're referring...
1043, and
all right.
I made a motion to continue this at a future meeting because it is 10:43, and I think we have to vote on a motion to
There's a
do
motion
that.
already on the floor.
Yes, there is.
Or to
There is a
extend the
motion on
meeting.
the floor.
And the
call
motion
for a
was
vote?
called, actually, it seems.
Well, you have to vote on the call, though.
Yeah, right.
So we vote to call the motion. Is there, Council Register?
Curtis Racer, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sonia Del, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Council Friedrichs?
I'm sorry, I could not hear what we're voting on.
We're voting on this, on calling the motion, ending discussion, and voting on the motion on the floor, which is to accept the, I would imagine what we'll call the blue and red version with a minor change to it, minor changes. So this is a vote to call the motion. You can vote yes or no on that.
I don't understand which version we're voting on. There are two
This
different legal versions in front of me that have different legal language.
We're actually not voting on the motion yet. We're voting on calling the vote.
Yes.
So do you want to call the vote or not call the vote? Or do you want to have us vote now or not vote?
I would say nay because I still don't know which version we're voting on.
Okay. So the motion carries, and what we are voting on, I believe, is the draft marked up in blue and red for changes. I know you've identified two different ones. One was in black and white in the packet. Are we voting on the correct one?
Yes, Councilor Friedman, there's only one version in the...
I'm looking at
There's only one
Resolution
version.
25.
It's just black.
All black.
The marked up version was just for your benefit to show
Yeah, that was
the
just
changes
draft.
that were proposed from the 2011 resolution, which are virtually identical to the item that says draft. It's just black and white, and that's 2 pages.
Before we go any further, I'm going to make a motion to extend the meeting to
Seconded.
50.
Second by Council Register. Council vote.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sonia Del, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Racer, aye.
Council Friedrichs?
It's now 10:46 and again, I could not hear what was being called.
To extend it to 10:50. To extend the meeting till 10:50.
I will second that motion.
It's
No, this is a vote.
It's a vote.
That's a vote.
It's a yes.
All right.
Then yes.
Yeah, so Councilor Friedman, there's one document, it's just the 2-page draft, black and white, says draft on top, with the whereas resolution in front of that.
This one.
The marked up version is only for your benefit to show the changes.
I do want to point out the vote call carried.
Yes.
Yes.
Council Register.
Aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sonia Del, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Council Friedrichs?
Again, I could not hear what we were voting on.
On the motion to accept the resolution.
I still don't know which version we are voting on.
One that says draft.
In black.
They both
Black
say
and white.
draft at the top. That's
Black and
the
white.
issue.
No, it's just
Only
black and
black.
white. It's all black and white.
No red or...
No
No
markups,
red
just
or-
black and
In
white.
effect, all it does is remove that,
It changes one sentence.
the one thing, right?
Yeah.
The rest of it's all had public hearings, it was approved and all that stuff.
She can abstain.
And it includes the language that Councilor Friedman, those changes that you mentioned.
Which were non-substantive.
Right.
You're still voting.
Right. You have a vote? Council Friedrichs?
I still don't know what we're voting on, so I will vote nay. I have not been able to participate with, the people have been mumbling quite a bit as they're getting more tired. And I printed out my packet in black and white, so I haven't been able to refer to which color until now. And I also don't believe there was ever a public hearing, contrary to what was just stated.
This is a resolution, not an ordinance.
Right, so a public hearing's not required because it's simply a resolution. That was what was required to adopt RSA 790.
Yes. The vote carries. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
So move if we can.
Second.
Council Register?
Aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Sine Adele, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Sally,
Councilor
Michael, thank
Friedrichs?
you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for staying.
I think this is great.
Thanks for staying till the end. Sorry.